Chapter 425. Daoli Laozu's counterattack came so quickly. In just a moment, Tianlu Laozu's attempt to force Xianling's sect to abdicate had turned into Daoli Laozu's questioning of Zhenling. The spirit-forging pill. That was a spirit-forging pill that could raise the rank of a golden pill. And there was also the mysterious wonder jade nectar that only the few alchemy grandmasters present, Transcendence Laozu, knew about. Lu Ping didn't know what the wonder jade nectar was, but he was very familiar with the spirit-forging pill. But now, Lu Ping at least knew that the wonder jade nectar was the most important ingredient in refining the spirit-forging pill. Although Daoli Laozu's speculation made sense, Lu Ping was very clear about Zhenling's spirit-forging pill. 8 spirit-forging pills were stored in a jade essence bottle. Lu Ping found it in the underground cave on Fei Ling Island. Jiang and Lu must have used the power of the spirit-forging pill to advance to the transcendence stage. Chu Xuancheng and the others might have done the same. However, if Zhenling had already mastered the recipe and could refine the spirit-forging pill by himself, Lu Ping didn't believe it. Lu Ping was one of the 5 alchemy grandmasters of Zhenling. Although he didn't usually go to the elixir pavilion, he was very clear about Zhenling's alchemy skills. If the sect had really obtained the recipe for the spirit-forging pill, a grandmaster like Lu Ping would definitely know about it. At least that spiritual master Xian Jing had obtained a spirit-forging pill from his master for research, but after researching for more than 20 years, he still didn't find anything. Tianlu Laozu waited for Daoli Laozu to finish speaking before he slowly stood up and said, "Daoli, do you know about the wonder jade essence bottle?" Daoli Laozu was startled when he heard Fornax Laozu's words. However, he did not reply. Fornax Laozu unhurriedly said, "The wondrous jade essence bottle itself is a spiritual level treasure. If you use it to store spirit-forging pills, do you think a mere 4,000 years can make a few spirit-forging pills lose their effectiveness?" Meanwhile, the Mistwater Pavilion's Fa Xiang, Laozu, said, "The myriad wonder chalcedony bottle is indeed capable of preserving the medicinal properties of a medicinal pill for thousands of years without losing, and using it to store a spirit-forging pill isn't considered to be a reckless waste of God's given gifts." But where did this myriad wonder chalcedony bottle come from? Fornax Laozu took out a wondrous jade essence bottle. Lu Ping recognized that it was the wondrous jade essence bottle that Lu Ping had brought out from Fei Ling Island all those years ago. However, he didn't expect that this wondrous jade essence bottle was actually a spiritual level treasure. Lu Ping cursed in his heart. He felt that the reward given by the sect at that time was too little. But then he remembered that he was only a 3rd-layer blood condensation realm minor repairs at that time. Even if a top-grade treasure was given to Lu Ping, he still needed to have the strength to receive it. Otherwise, a mid-grade mystic grade soul nourishing wood wouldn't have been enough for Lu Ping to hide it for so many years. Fornax Laozu casually threw the wondrous jade essence bottle to the Mistwater Pavilion's Fa Xiang, Laozu, who had just spoken. This Laozu stretched out his hand to catch the wondrous jade essence bottle, and his eyes immediately lit up. He clicked his tongue and said, "It really is the myriad wonder chalcedony bottle. This item hasn't appeared in the North Sea for many years." As he spoke, this Laozu opened the lid of the wondrous jade essence bottle and sniffed it. Then, he closed his eyes as if he was recalling something. After a moment, he opened his eyes and said, "Yes, there is indeed the aura of the spirit-forging pill in this bottle. I, Laozu, have seen some records about the spirit-forging pill in an ancient book. This wondrous jade essence bottle definitely once contained the spirit-forging pill." When this Laozu finished speaking, he handed the wondrous jade essence bottle to the next Laozu. The wondrous jade essence bottle passed through the hands of the other Laozu, then returned to Fornax Laozu. The dozen or so alchemy masters in the North Sea Palace stared at it eagerly, but they didn't have the qualifications to touch the most ideal treasure for alchemists to store precious pills. After Fornax Laozu put away the wondrous jade essence bottle, he laughed at himself and said, "I found the spirit-forging pill on Fei Ling Island, but I didn't find the recipe. As for the wonder dew, I, Zhenling, haven't been lucky enough to find it." The spirit forging pill was the best pill in the Fei Ling sect back then. Even with all the power of the Fei Ling sect, they might not even have a few. Usually, it is carried by the few Laozu in the sect, but this wondrous jade essence bottle can obviously contain no less than 5 pills. How is this possible? The one who spoke was Wei Shuren. It seemed that he had regained a lot of his rationality. Fornax Laozu glanced at him and said, "Who knows? Maybe this wondrous jade essence bottle belongs to Jiao Yuqiang." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. This was the 3rd time Lu Ping had heard someone mention the name Jiao Yuqiang. That's impossible. Wei Shuren seemed to have grasped something, and his slightly crazed demeanor from before reappeared. He said, "Jiao Yuqiang was surrounded and killed by 2 Dharma adepts. How could he have left behind anything?" Surrounded and killed. Fornax Laozu's lips curled into a mocking smile as he said, "They surrounded him, but I don't know if they killed him or not." Wei Shuren was still angry and wanted to say something, but to his surprise, Dao Laozu said, "That's right. One of our sect's Laozu participated in the siege of Jiao Yuqiang." Jiao Yuqiang did escape back to Fei Ling Mountain, but he had been seriously injured by the Laozu and was on the verge of death. There was no way he could have survived. Moreover, the island sealing formation on Fei Ling Island was activated at that time, and the entire island was on the verge of sinking, so we didn't look for his body. The wondrous jade bottle. Jiao Yuqiang once refined a few of these jade bottles. Fornax Laozu and Dao Laozu's guesses were full of loopholes, especially when Fornax Laozu mentioned the name Jiao Yuqiang. For some reason, the North Sea Palace's Laozu nodded in agreement. Although Dao Laozu's face was gloomy, he didn't say anything else. The North Sea Palace was silent for a moment. Then, Sea Flame Sect's Laozu turned to Dao Laozu and said, "Brother Dao Li, does this mean that your sect really obtained the recipe for the spirit forging pill? Did you get it from Fei Ling Island?" Dao Laozu's face was solemn. He shook his head and said, "No, it was sent by the people of the East Sea. They found Zhongshuan Laozu's cave a few years ago. However, this pill recipe is not complete. It only records the spirit herbs needed for refining the pill and some other things to take note of. The specific refining method is not recorded." Lu Ping saw that the other Dharma manifestation stage masters were indifferent and didn't show any reaction to the arrival of the East Sea cultivators. Obviously, the Laozu present had already received the news, and Dao Laozu didn't deliberately hide it. "Brother Dao Li, do you think the people of the East Sea didn't get the pill recipe, or did they deliberately give your sect an incomplete pill recipe with ulterior motives?" Dao Laozu shook his head and said, "The pill recipe can't be fake. They can't fool me. Brother Dao Li, do you know the purpose of the people from the East Sea?" Blue Sea Sect's Laozu couldn't help but ask. Dao Laozu said, "The overseas demon clans have already formed an alliance. The East Sea cultivators naturally can't sit still. This time, they are here to help the overseas human cultivators to fight against the demon clans. The leader is a Dharma manifestation stage cultivator from the Crystal Palace. Following him are 5 late-core forging stage and 5 mid-core forging stage cultivators from the 5 major sections. Our sect is only the first stop. Later on, these 11 people will visit the other sections." After the dispute between Tianlu Laozu and Dao Laozu, the following bright treasure trade fair became dull. The enlightened masters Laozu of the various sects seemed to have some ulterior motives and hurriedly exchanged a few treasures. This time, the North Sea Pill Masters gathering came to an end. However, after the gathering ended, a few cultivators from the sects found Tianlu Laozu in private. Both sides had a secret discussion. Tianlu Laozu's gloomy expression finally relaxed after not being able to exchange for the longevity pill recipe. Without guessing, Lu Ping knew that these cultivators came for the Spirit Stone Meridian Nourishing Pill. Moreover, they were ruthlessly extorted by Tianlu Laozu. When Lu Ping followed Tianlu Laozu back to the Snow Mist Palace, the first thing he saw was Tian Shui Laozu's gloomy expression. Obviously, Tian Shui Laozu already knew everything that had happened in the North Sea Palace. Tianlu Laozu sighed and said, all my efforts were in vain. I was almost tricked by that old brat Dao Li. I had no choice but to reveal the 1,000-wonder jade essence bottle. Tian Shui Laozu said coldly, the various sects are not that stupid. It is said that the spiritual forging pills recipe was not recorded down. Instead, it was passed down verbally by a few important figures of the Fei Ling sect. I believe that all the sects know about it. Tianlu Laozu nodded his head and said, Senior sister, you mean to say that the incomplete recipe of the spiritual forging pill that was sent by the various sects in the Eastern Sea was passed down by Zhongxian Laozu? Tian Shui Laozu nodded her head and said, Zhongxian Laozu fled to the Eastern Sea with the intention of restoring his sect. How could he not pay attention to a top-grade spiritual pill like the spiritual forging pill? However, he is after all a blacksmith and not a master alchemist. Thus, the recipe of the spiritual forging pill was not passed down to him. However, with his status, it is not difficult for him to know some of the spiritual herbs needed to refine the spiritual forging pill. However, Tian Shui Laozu paused for a moment and her face turned cold again. We cannot give up on the matter of collecting the recipe of the longevity pill. Xian Ling sect cannot be counted on. They would rather destroy the cultivation of their 3 core forging realm cultivators and exhaust their lifespan than to exchange the recipe with us. However, after this group of people from the Eastern Sea goes to Xian Ling sect, they might come to Zhenling. At that time, we will see if we can get any ideas from them, especially the cultivators from the Crystal Palace. The Eastern Sea Crystal Palace even has a 10-year longevity pill. Of course, we don't even need to think about it. As long as we can get a 5-year longevity pill recipe, it will be enough. Junior brother Tian Kang's days are getting shorter and shorter. Tianlu Laozu nodded his head. Tian Shui Laozu then looked at Lu Ping with a trace of admiration in his eyes. He said, Brat, this time, although you did not manage to exchange for the longevity pill recipe, you did humiliate a Xian Ling sect alchemist at the entrance of the Northern Sea Palace. Even though Wei Shiren is a glutton, it is still a good thing. I, Laozu, am a man of my words. I will let you pick a treasure. After saying that, Tian Shui Laozu waved his hand and a door appeared in front of him. It was similar to the method Jiang Tianlin Laozu used to capture Lu Ping and bring him to the Xiaoyao Palace. Grand Marshal Uncle, Lu Ping said with some embarrassment, actually, this disciple also has the recipe for the 5-year longevity pill. Chapter 426. For some unknown reason, Tianlu Laozu and Tian Shui Laozu didn't have the expression of joy that Lu Ping had imagined. They just stared at Lu Ping with an ominous glint in their eyes. Clearly, they were suppressing their anger. Tianlu Laozu didn't say anything while Tian Shui Laozu frowned. In the end, he didn't say anything. Why didn't you say so earlier? Are you coveting the treasures in Laozu's hands? Lu Ping sighed inwardly. This time, he really didn't say it at the right time. Others had racked their brains but failed to obtain it. Yet, he didn't take it out. It was inevitable that others would criticize him. However, this item was obtained by him. Even if he didn't take it out, what could others say? Thus, he didn't mind and said, Disciple has long wanted to say it, but I didn't have the chance yesterday. If it wasn't for teacher telling Disciple about this matter, Disciple wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to find this pill formula. Lu Ping was very familiar with lying. When the two Laozu heard that it was Lu Tianling Laozu who specifically asked Lu Ping to find it, they looked at each other and saw a trace of gratification in each other's eyes. Thus, Tianlu Laozu said, Bring the pill formula over to the old man to take a look. Lu Ping respectfully handed over a 5 years longevity pill formula to Tianlu Laozu. With a thought, Tianlu Laozu already checked the contents of the pill formula. After a moment, Tianlu Laozu put down the jade slip with the pill formula with a calm expression. Tian Shui Laozu, who was beside him, was somewhat impatient as she asked, How is it? The pill formula can still be used. Tianlu Laozu replied calmly, Not bad. It's not the same as the previous pill formula. It can still be used. Tian Shui Laozu's face lit up with joy as she said, "Good, good." Although Tianlu Laozu was still as calm as before, Lu Ping could tell from Tianlu Laozu's grip on the jade slip that Tianlu Laozu's heart wasn't calm. Heavenly Snow Ancestor looked at Lu Ping and said with a smile, "Little sly fox, your cunning skills are indeed inherited from that little girl Lu Tianling. But you're still far from her level." "Fine, I'll keep my word. Go ahead and choose your treasures, but don't think of taking too many. 3 is 3. Heavenly Snow Ancestor nodded and said, "All right, I'll keep my word." Finished speaking, without waiting for Lu Ping to react, the black door in front of Lu Ping swallowed Lu Ping in a single gulp. After Lu Ping was taken away by Tian Shui Laozu turned to Tianlu Laozu and said, "I didn't expect this kid to have so many treasures in his hands." The title of Treasure Boy in his early years didn't disgrace him at all. The Forsaken Cauldron Ancestor faintly said, "There is nothing special about this kid's growth. His achievements are his own hard work, and the treasures he possesses were also earned by himself. Even if we know that he has something we need, how could we open our mouths and ask for it? Since he can take it out himself, it shows that his feelings for the sect are very deep. The further a cultivator walks in the cultivation world, the colder their heart becomes. This is something that can't be helped. With this kid's character, if he can grow up smoothly in the future, no matter if he stands in front of the stage or behind the scenes, it will be 100 benefits and no harm to the sect." Tian Shui Laozu nodded and said, "Xian Feng also told me about some of this kid's matters in the Eastern Sea. I heard that in the perished secret territory, there's a faction that he runs that has entered the eyes of the Northern Alliance. In the past, because of Xuanqin's matter, Xian Feng didn't like Tianlin and Tianling very much. Who would have thought that he would place so much importance on this kid? This really surprised me." Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, "I've also heard about this matter. It's said that Tian Xiang Laozu even met this kid because of this. I also heard that this kid learned the Bell Cauldron pill from Xuanqin's disciple and was lucky enough to refine one. It can be said that he saved Xian Feng's life." Tian Shui Laozu also said, that year, Xian Feng was depressed because of Xuanqin's matter. After being attacked by Tian Fan, he finally pulled himself together. However, this kid brought back the spirit forging pill from Fei Ling Island. Originally, Xian Feng was supposed to have one, but he rejected it. Previously, when Xian Feng went to the Eastern Sea, it was with this kid's help that he obtained a 5,000-year-old heavenly wind leaf. Originally, I was wondering if Xian Feng would be able to condense a 7th-grade golden core. Now that I think about it, his achievements should not be any lower than Xian Cheng and Xian Shan. Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, "A 5,000-year-old heavenly wind leaf is not that easy to refine. If it is successful, even if Xian Feng's strength cannot be compared to Feng Shutao's, he should still be above Xian Shan and Xian Cheng's. I've already ordered Xian Jing to send the last spirit forging pill over to him, strictly ordering him to refine the heavenly wind leaf as soon as possible after consuming it." Tian Shui Laozu's eyes lit up and said, "Junior brother, you've put in a lot of effort. However, isn't that spirit forging pill left for martial nephew Xian Jing to research on the spirit forging pill's formula?" Tianlu Laozu snorted coldly and didn't say anything. Tian Shui Laozu also didn't ask anymore. The two of them were silent for a while in the snow mist palace. Tianlu Laozu then said, "How should we deal with the envoy from the Eastern Sea this time?" Tian Shui Laozu smiled and said, "What else can we do?" The moment they came to the Northern Sea, they went to Xian Ling sect and gave us a lot of benefits. We, the Xinling sect, are naturally envious. Naturally, we want to get some benefits from the rich and overbearing Eastern Sea Daoist. I think the other sects in the Northern Sea have the same idea. However, Xian Ling sect is the #1 sect in the Northern Sea, and Dao Xing Laozu is the only late Dharma adept in the Northern Sea. The first stop of the envoy from the Eastern Sea is Xian Ling sect. Therefore, the sects in the Northern Sea will naturally follow Xianling sect's lead. Tianlu Laozu smiled knowingly and said, "That's right. With the acknowledgement of the Eastern Sea's great sect, I think the entire Xianling sect should be in high spirits." After a while, Tianlu Laozu opened his mouth again and said, "Senior sister, is there any news from Senior Tianxiang recently?" Tian Shui Laozu shook her head seriously and said, "Ever since the last time Senior Tianxiang arranged a lot of things in the perished mystery land, there has been no news from him. However, before he went into closed-door training, he seemed to have found Xianqin. A few days ago, there was news that a pill formula from the Eastern Sea would be sent over. It is also a 5-year longevity pill formula. It should be from Xuanqin's hands." Tianlu Laozu smiled happily and said, "It must have been hard on this child. This time, with these 2 5-year longevity pill formulas, if the entire sect were to use the strength of the entire sect to refine all the longevity pills that we have collected previously, it should be able to save up 30 years of life for Senior Tiankong. With this 30 years of life as the price, Senior Tiankong can advance to the mid-Dharma stage and gain an additional 200 years of life in one go. By then, Xianling sect will really be suppressed by our sect." Tian Shui Laozu also looked a little excited and said, "This plan has been planned by us for 50 years after Junior Tiankong was seriously injured. As long as Junior Tiankong can advance to the mid-Dharma stage, everything will be worth it." Tianlu thought for a moment and asked again, "Senior sister, so many years have passed. Senior Tianxiang's previous plan, is it to bring Xianqin back?" Tian Shui Laozu shook her head and said, "This Senior Tianxiang did not say it clearly. Back then, Xianlin, Xianling, and Xianqin were 3 people that even we could not control in the sect. However, these 3 bastards were all very respectful to Senior Tianxiang. More than 50 years ago, after that incident, Xianqin and Xianling could not coexist in the sect anymore. Xianqin left in a fit of anger. Now, it seems like she was also plotted against by someone else. However, after that, Senior Tianxiang went to the perished mystery land to manage. Now that I think about it, Senior Tianxiang must have already seen through this matter decades ago and set up a plan. Previously, there was news from the Eastern Sea that Xianqin might have also advanced to the Dharma stage. If that is the case, once Xianqin returns and Junior Tiankong recovers from his injuries, his cultivation will improve. If that is the case, even if Senior Tianxiang Xianling sect will not dare to attack our sect. Once Senior Tianxiang succeeds, the Northern Sea will really be under our control." The black door flashed and disappeared. Lu Ping had already appeared safely in the snow mist palace. Tian Shui Laozu and Tian Xiang Laozu had already stopped chatting. Tian Shui Laozu smiled and said, "Brat, what good things have you brought? Show them to me." Lu Ping listened to the martial granduncle's teasing tone and felt helpless. He thought to himself, if this martial granduncle was a man, then he'd be a real troublemaker in the cultivation world. No wonder he was sent to Huanyu Island to wrangle with the old foxes from the other sections. Lu Ping thought to himself, no wonder he was sent to Huanyu Island to wrangle with the old foxes from the other sections. If it wasn't because this Laozu had achieved transcendence and wanted to put on the airs of a senior, Lu Ping would have already been beaten up badly. Thus, he smiled and said, "Senior granduncle, this disciple was searching for treasures in the spatial ring that you opened up. Don't tell me you don't know." Tian Shui Laozu frowned and scolded, "You little bastard, why are you talking so much nonsense?" "Laozu, I was just discussing the sect's matters with your senior granduncle Tianlu. Why would I pay attention to your little quarrel?" "Laozu, I wanted to give you something good. If you don't take it out, then forget it." Helpless, Lu Ping could only take out the 3 treasures that he found in Tian Shui Laozu's spatial ring. Brat, you do have some foresight. Spiritual gathering pearl. I heard that you opened up a small island in the outer endless sea and became the island lord. On that island, there were 3 small spiritual veins. One of them was even used by a clan that belonged to our sect. Lu Ping smiled calmly and said, "That's just a rumor." Other than one spiritual vein that was found in a cave belonging to a demon cultivator in the outer endless sea, the rest were nurtured by the spiritual gathering pearls that disciple found during his travels. Tian Shui Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. He didn't pursue the matter any further. Lu Ping was also calm and composed, as if he wasn't afraid of any slanderous accusations. Tianlu Laozu picked up one of the jade boxes and opened it. Inside was a black inner core. Tianlu Laozu frowned and said, "Mystic Tortoise Golden Core. What are you using this for?" Lu Ping explained, "Disciple has a demon tortoise under me. Its cultivation has reached the 9th layer of blood condensation realm. Disciple is also preparing for it to advance to the core forging realm." Tian Shui Laozu inadvertently glanced at the black and swarthy mystic tortoise core and said, "This is a first-layer core forging demon tortoise that I killed during my travels in the Southern Sea." The mystic tortoise is considered a high-grade race within the Southern Sea tortoise race. Although it doesn't have an inherited bloodline like Bagui, it's still not weak. The third item was a wood elemental natural oddity. It looked like several twists and turns of its own. Tian Shui Laozu couldn't help but ask, "Little fellow, you're really strange. Although my spatial ring doesn't contain any rare treasures, there are still a few natural treasures and spiritual treasures. Even some divine abilities and secret techniques, spiritual pills and secret medicines are much stronger than these. Why are you not interested in them?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Disciple Laozu's collection has already dazzled Disciple. I'm gasping in amazement. I'm almost dazzled by the number of treasures I've collected." However, after much consideration, Disciple still decided to pick the ones that I can use now. Although the other things are valuable, they aren't of much help to Disciple. Chapter 427. In Jinling, earth-ranked and above heaven and earth spiritual items, as well as other similar treasures, if one wanted to bestow it to their disciples, they would need at least 2 to 3 Transcendence Laozu's approval. Tian Shui Laozu had agreed to bestow some benefits to Lu Ping, but it was in her own name. Thus, even if Tian Shui Laozu might have even better treasures in her possession, and they weren't from the sect, she wouldn't take them out for Lu Ping to choose from. As for the few mystic rank heaven and earth spiritual items, Lu Ping really didn't fancy them. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Grand Marshal Uncle, actually this disciple still has some treasures that I fancy in the treasury. I wonder if this disciple can use other items to exchange for them." "Oh." Tian Shui Laozu had an interested expression as she said, "What good stuff do you have? Take it out and let me have a look." Lu Ping flipped through the storage ring in his hand before taking out a piece of chalcedony. The moment he took it out, the entire snow mist palace immediately turned cold. "Not bad." Tian Shui Laozu's eyes lit up as she said, "This is a mid-grade mystic rank cold ice pith. From the looks of it, it has been around for thousands of years. Our sect has a few initial stage core forging cultivators who practice ice attribute cultivation arts who have reached the threshold to advance to the middle stage. Your spiritual item came at the right time. Tell me, what did you fancy earlier?" Lu Ping knew that Tian Shui Laozu was a great master who practiced ice attribute cultivation arts in their sect. He purposely took out this cold ice pith because he knew that Tian Shui Laozu would definitely be interested in it. A mid-grade mystic rank heaven and earth spiritual item was considered not bad for ordinary initial stage core forging cultivators. However, Lu Ping didn't fancy it. Even though Lu Ping had an ice snake among his Samling subordinates, if the green sea snake were to use a mid-grade mystic rank heaven and earth spiritual item to advance to the middle stage, it would be a waste. Lu Ping calmly passed the spiritual item to Tian Shui Laozu before saying, "This disciple saw that there is a wind seed in Laozu's treasury. This wind seed is useful to this disciple. I hope Laozu can part with it." Just as Lu Ping finished speaking, a small whirlwind-like wind seed appeared in front of Lu Ping. Traces of wind scattered around the wind seed, causing the temperature around the wind seed to drop even faster. It was to the point where frost was about to form. Tian Shui Laozu said, although this wind seed is a wind attribute heaven and earth spiritual item, it was obtained by me, Laozu, from the northern ice plains. The northern ice plains has been affected by the harsh cold all year round. When this wind seed is used, the cold wind is bone-piercing. Although it is considered a high-quality heaven and earth spiritual item, it is still lacking when compared to this cold ice pith. Brat, do you have anything else that you value? Lu Ping already knew this would happen. Thus, he nodded his head and smiled. This disciple has taken a liking to a piece of crystal jade. Lu Ping was still unable to see how Tian Shui Laozu moved, and a piece of crystal-like object appeared in his hand. He said, a second-grade water attribute mutated spiritual material. This is an extremely good item. It is comparable to those third-grade spiritual materials. The value of these two items added together is comparable to that cold ice pith. Brat, do you still need anything else? The old man also has a few heaven and earth spiritual items here. If you are able to exchange for that indigo spiritual fire, the old man will let you choose any of the heaven and earth spiritual items here. Tianlu Laozu knew that Lu Ping was searching for all sorts of heaven and earth spiritual items. Previously, Tianjiang Laozu had used the Eastern Purple Chi Flame to exchange for his profound sky spiritual fire, as well as the 3,000-year-old spiritual grass in the Northern Sea Palace. Thus, when he saw that Lu Ping was actually willing to take out a heaven and earth spiritual item to exchange for these items, Tianlu Laozu immediately shifted his attention to Lu Ping's high-grade profound spiritual item, indigo spiritual fire. The indigo spiritual fire was the most suitable profound spiritual fire for alchemy. Tianlu Laozu knew very well that if an early-stage core forging disciple used this fire to advance to the mid-stage, not only would it greatly benefit their alchemy skills, but it would also be possible for them to achieve a 6th-grade golden core and break through to the transcendent stage in the future. Lu Ping's heart moved. Now in the 7 Thunder Gem Calabash, 3 heaven and earth spiritual items of the 6 attributes of metal, wood, water, earth, wind, and ice were all gathered. There was only one heaven and earth spiritual item of the fire attribute left. Tianlu Laozu was the sect's transcendent stage alchemy grandmaster. How could he lack all kinds of fire seeds? Presumably, Lu Ping did not have to use the indigo spiritual fire. Lu Ping also had the soul wood and the Ming water of the mid-grade profound spiritual items. As long as he took out any of them, he could immediately exchange for 2 kinds of heaven and earth spiritual fire seeds. However, after thinking about it, Lu Ping still refused and said, "Thank you, Laozu, but I have nothing else I need at the moment." The 7 Thunder Gem Calabash could be said to be second only to Lu Ping's own bloodline. The secret of the 12 natal gentian pearls and the 9,000 years old white jade lotus flower in which the golden core was stored was even higher than Lu Ping's smelting of the Xianyuan heavy water to advance to the mid-core forging stage and the cultivation technique, North Sea wave listening art. Lu Ping was not willing to let others associate the 7 Thunder Gem Calabash because of the heaven and earth spiritual item. This kind of treasure was always coveted. Because of its illustrious reputation, it was the most precious treasure in the hands of the 7th Patriarch, Peng Daoren. Therefore, in the cultivation world, it had the reputation of being the first divine artifact. Unfortunately, after Peng Daoren, there was no other cultivator in the cultivation world who could refine the 7 Thunder Gem Calabash to its peak. Tianlu Laozu nodded his head regretfully. Tian Shui Laozu laughed and scolded, "Little fox." Then, he no longer cared about him. After bidding farewell to the 2 Laozu, Lu Ping left the Snow Mist Palace. Thinking that he had yet to tour the Huanyu Island, now that he had some free time, he might as well take a stroll around the city square. Ever since Lu Ping became a master alchemist, especially after he returned from the Eastern Sea, Lu Ping rarely went to the city square to purchase spiritual herbs without restraint. This was because as the master alchemist of the sect, there was basically no need for Lu Ping to do it himself. The sect would send a large amount of spiritual herbs to Lu Ping. This was the advantage of having the backing of a great sect. The scale of Huanyu Island city square was very large. There were 3 streets in each direction. The city square was also filled with cultivators, making it very lively. Lu Ping excitedly began to purchase spiritual herbs without restraint. Spiritual herbs that were more than 500 years old, especially those that could be used to concoct the blood condensation pill, were all bought by Lu Ping with a large amount of spiritual stones. As for the 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, although Huanyu Island was the most famous cultivators' city square in the Northern Sea, there weren't many 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the various shops. However, Lu Ping didn't mind. He would buy as many as he could. After half a day, although Lu Ping had some harvests, he became dispirited. Originally, Lu Ping still had the thought of picking up some leftovers and seeing if he could find some good items that could make his eyes light up. However, it was clear that luck couldn't always be on one person. Lu Ping's mind raced and he suddenly thought of the mortal market. It was a place where all kinds of strange things could be found. Although most of the things in the market were fake, it depended on the cultivator's eyesight. Perhaps one of the things that looked like a piece of junk could actually be a rare treasure. Lu Ping walked around here and there, heading towards the northern side of the city square. The mortal market was not as clean and tidy as the city square. This was a place where all sorts of good and bad people mixed together. There were all sorts of stalls set up everywhere without any sort of order to speak of. All sorts of shouts, quarrels, and curses could be heard. Lu Ping was not surprised. As he walked slowly, he lowered his head to look at the various items placed on the ground. At the same time, he inadvertently glanced behind him, the corners of his lips curling into a sneer. When he passed by a narrow alley, Lu Ping's figure flashed and disappeared into it. A young cultivator hurriedly walked over and also walked into the alley. However, when the cultivator entered the alley and saw that it was empty, he was immediately shocked. "Are you looking for me?" A calm voice rang out from behind the cultivator. The calm voice caused the cultivator to jump and he hastily turned around. Lu Ping looked at this mid-blood condensation realm minor repairs in front of him and felt a sense of déjà vu. On the other hand, the cultivator in front of him was already overjoyed. He bowed and said, "Junior Tseng Wu greets Senior." Lu Ping asked in surprise, "Tseng Wu? I don't know you. Why are you bowing so respectfully to me?" Tseng Wu straightened his body and said excitedly, "Senior might have forgotten, but I am a little shop assistant on Autumn Cloud Island. Senior rewarded me with pills and spirit stones that allowed me to reach my current level of cultivation." It suddenly dawned on Lu Ping. Back then, when he was still a blood condensation realm cultivator and returned to Chiuyun Island from the Monster Sea region, he did hire an early blood refining realm cultivator as a guide. He even gave the cultivator a few bottles of medicinal pellets and spirit stones. But who would have thought that after a few decades, the blood refining realm cultivator had become a mid-blood condensation realm cultivator with a dignified appearance? Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Those things are nothing. It's fate that we met. It's just a small favor." Tseng Wu replied in a serious tone, "To Senior, the favor you gave me back then may be as easy as lifting a finger, but to this junior, it is of utmost importance. If it weren't for Senior's kindness, this junior would still be a mediocre blood refining realm cultivator." Lu Ping didn't want to talk about this anymore. He saw that although Tseng Wu's cultivation wasn't pure, his foundation was solid and his aura was sharp. It was obvious that he often appeared in dangerous places. Lu Ping asked, "Tseng Wu, have you joined a sect?" Tseng Wu answered, reporting to Senior, "I'm used to living a free and undisciplined life. I'm afraid I won't be noticed by a sect. I've been hunting demonic beasts with a few friends for a living." This time, after Disciple and a few good friends set out to sea, we wanted to sell some of our gains on Universe Island. We never expected to encounter Senior, so we chased after you first with the intention of thanking Senior for helping us all those years ago. I never expected that it would cause Senior to misunderstand. Lu Ping smiled. Seeing Tseng Wu's clear eyes, he knew he wasn't lying. Lu Ping said, "Your friends are in the mortal market?" "I happen to be playing in the mortal market. Let's go see what you've gained." Tseng Wu's face lit up and he hurriedly said, "Junior, lead the way." Then, he led the way. Lu Ping looked at Tseng Wu's back and smiled noncommittally. He then leisurely followed Tseng Wu. Chapter 428. Lu Ping followed Tseng Wu into the depths of the mortal market. Tseng Wu walked hurriedly with a happy expression on his face. Lu Ping followed behind him at a leisurely pace. At the same time, he had the time to browse through the various items on display at his feet. A moment later, Lu Ping's expression changed and he glanced ahead. However, Tseng Wu, who was leading the way for Lu Ping, did not notice it at all. He continued to walk forward with a happy expression. Tseng Wu did not think that the cultivator who gave him the spirit stones and pills back then was actually a core forging expert. When he and his companions went out to sea this time, they found a cave left behind by a predecessor. In the cave, they had a plentiful harvest, but there were also many miscellaneous items that they did not recognize. His companions were all independent cultivators, so they were not very knowledgeable. They were not sure of the value of these items, and they were afraid of selling them to the shops in the market. They did not dare to show them to high-grade cultivators, afraid that they would be killed and robbed. Just when everyone was at a loss, Tseng Wu found Lu Ping, who was buying spirit herbs in the market. Tseng Wu had an extremely deep impression of this senior who had helped him all those years ago. Most importantly, Lu Ping did not treat him like other high-grade cultivators. From the spirit stones and pills that Lu Ping had given him, Tseng Wu believed that Lu Ping was not a cultivator with evil intentions. Furthermore, as a core forging cultivator, Lu Ping must be very knowledgeable. The things that Tseng Wu and his companions had obtained could be shown to this senior. Tseng Wu believed that there must be some valuable treasures among the things that he and his companions had found. If this senior valued them, they would definitely be able to obtain a lot of benefits from this senior. Tseng Wu knew that this senior was an alchemist. At this moment, there was a sudden noise in front of them. Tseng Wu's expression changed. That was where his companions were. Tseng Wu looked behind him and saw that Lu Ping had nodded. Tseng Wu hurriedly squeezed into the crowd of onlookers. This is going to be lively. I just don't know what kind of treasure these little fellows obtained to actually provoke the people from the 10 great sects to forcefully buy it. Lu Ping smiled silently, and the aura of a core forging cultivator spread out. The cultivators around him moved aside, opening a path for Lu Ping. The commotion in the front also stopped. Lu Ping walked in and saw Tseng Wu, 3 men and 2 women, arguing with a few blood condensation cultivators. Most of the cultivators who were arguing were at the mid and late blood condensation realm. It was clear that they were trying to suppress Tseng Wu's companions. Even though Tseng Wu's companions were trying their best to defend themselves, their faces were flushed red. Their strength was too weak and they were clearly at a disadvantage. Lu Ping looked at the cultivators. From their clothes, they should be from Xianling sect, Shui Yan Pavilion, and Fei Yu sect. There were also 2 cultivators who were wearing sect uniforms, but they clearly did not belong to the 10 great sections. However, these people were just small fries. Lu Ping glanced at the onlookers behind them with a hint of ridicule in his eyes. Then, he looked at the miscellaneous items placed in front of Tseng Wu's companions. He squatted down and began to look through the items as if there was no one else around. Lu Ping roughly looked through the items in front of him and more or less understood what Tseng Wu and his companions were in trouble. Most of these items were useless utensils. Moreover, most of the utensils were made from low-grade spiritual materials. It was obvious that these items came from the same cave abode. In other words, Tseng Wu and his companions had discovered a cave abode in the sea. Judging from the utensils, the owner of this cave abode might have been a cultivator with a high cultivation when he was alive. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to use low-grade spiritual herbs to make cups, tables, chairs, and bowls. Just as Lu Ping was looking through the items on the ground, a green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. He reached out and grabbed something that looked like a broken piece of ceramic. However, at that moment, a loud voice shouted, where did this blind fool come from? Xianling sect and Feiyu sect will buy all these things. Scram! Lu Ping frowned. He felt a strong gust of wind in front of him. Lu Ping's spiritual sense was very sensitive. Before the blood condensation realm cultivator made his move, he had already noticed something was amiss. He snorted coldly, and the cultivator who attacked Lu Ping felt as if a sudden clap of thunder had exploded in his ears. Before the technique he sent towards Lu Ping could reach him, the arcane energy in his body was already thrown into chaos by Lu Ping's cold snort. The technique lost control of itself in mid-air and collapsed. Just as the cultivator made his move, another cultivator in the crowd followed suit. However, his target wasn't Lu Ping, but the Xianling late blood condensation realm disciple who attacked Lu Ping. This cultivator didn't attack the Xianling sect disciple. Instead, he used a defensive artifact to shield the disciple. This was obviously a last-minute scheme against Lu Ping. The goal was to embarrass Lu Ping in front of everyone. However, Lu Ping had already seen through it. Contrary to what the Xianling sect enlightened master had expected, Lu Ping didn't punish the Xianling sect disciple directly. Instead, he used his spiritual sense to attack the Xianling sect disciple, causing him to bleed from his nose and mouth. The Xianling sect enlightened master who had shielded the Xianling sect disciple with his defensive artifact turned pale. The core forging realm disciple's spatial zone had already been shattered. Even if he survived, he would only be a mortal. At the same time, the enlightened master was shocked. This Xianling mid-core forging realm cultivator's spiritual sense was so powerful that he could destroy a late blood condensation realm cultivator's cultivation base. Lu Ping clapped his hands and stood up. He said, "You've got guts." The North Sea Grand Alliance has a rule that cultivators are not allowed to attack each other on Huanyu Island. Does this Xianling sect disciple think that Huanyu Island belongs to him? Does he think he can attack whoever he wants? Lu Ping looked at the Xianling sect enlightened master who jumped out from the crowd. The enlightened master retracted his defensive artifact and said coldly, "Of course, Huanyu Island doesn't belong to Xianling sect. However, Xianling sect is a part of Huanyu Island. As a core forging realm enlightened master of Jinling, how dare you kill a low-level cultivator of our sect? What kind of rule does the North Sea Grand Alliance allow you to do that?" Lu Ping laughed, but there was no trace of a smile on his face. He said coldly, "What a joke. I'm a core forging realm cultivator, but I was attacked by a blood condensation realm minor repairs cultivator. If I don't punish him, where will my dignity as a core forging realm cultivator go?" Lu Ping didn't wait for the Xianling sect cultivator to speak and continued, "Speaking of which, I really admire this Xianling blood condensation realm cultivator for having the guts to attack a core forging realm enlightened master. As expected of a disciple of Xianling sect. You're truly bold and skillful. I admire you." As Lu Ping spoke, he cupped his fists at the Xianling sect cultivator who was lying limply on the ground. His words were full of mockery. By now, more and more cultivators had gathered to watch the fight. Many of them laughed out loud when they heard Lu Ping's words. The Xianling sect enlightened master's face flushed red as if blood was about to drip out of his eyes. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Jinling and Xianling sect were at loggerheads again. Such a situation was not uncommon in the North Sea's cultivation world. However, the strange thing was, where did this Xianling sect disciple get the courage to attack a Jinling core forging realm cultivator? Not to mention, his mouth was so filthy that even death couldn't wipe out his crimes. However, many of the cultivators who were watching the fight from the sidelines saw through the trick. The Xianling sect's core forging realm enlightened master had activated his defensive artifact the moment the Xianling sect disciple made his move. This was obviously a ploy to humiliate the Jinling sect disciple. However, the Jinling enlightened master was already prepared. He used his divine sense to shatter the Xianling sect disciple's heart core, causing Xianling sect to suffer a double loss. This Jinling enlightened master was really powerful. He could shatter a late blood condensation realm cultivator's heart core with just his divine sense. The surrounding cultivators looked at Lu Ping in amazement, but they all took 2 steps back in unison. The circle around them suddenly doubled in size. Good, good. The Xianling sect disciple's face turned ashen. He pointed at Lu Ping and said, "Sir, do you dare to leave your name? I'll have a friendly match outside Huanyu Island. Please don't hesitate to teach me." He turned to a brown-robed cultivator beside him and said, "Junior brother Sha, why don't you stand aside and watch for me?" The brown-robed cultivator looked at Lu Ping with an ugly expression. However, he still pulled the Xianling sect disciple to the side and whispered something to him. From time to time, he turned back to look at Lu Ping and Sha Feiyu. When the Xianling sect disciple returned, he looked at Lu Ping with a dark expression. He didn't mention the friendly match again. He just stood at the side without saying a word, but he didn't leave either. Lu Ping looked at the brown-robed cultivator and knew that he was a perfected master from Feiyu sect. He sneered and didn't say anything. He squatted down again and picked up the broken ceramic shard. Then, he turned to Tsing Wu and his companion, who were already scared stiff, and asked, "I want this shard. Do you want spirit stones or medicinal pills in exchange?" The 2 female cultivators who were arguing with the Xianling sect, Feiyu sect, and Shui Yan Pavilion's blood condensation realm disciples were speechless when they heard Lu Ping's question. Their faces were filled with fear. However, Tsing Wu reacted quickly and said, "Senior, this is something that my companions and I found while we were exploring overseas. We didn't know what it was at first. If Senior likes it, you can just give me some spirit stones." Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said, "I won't take advantage of you. This ceramic shard should be one of the shards of a spiritual artifact. Although it's broken and doesn't have much value, just this spiritual material alone is worth a lot of spirit stones. Here are 60 mid-grade spirit stones and 6 bottles of blood condensation realm cultivation pills. The 6 of you can split it among yourselves." Tsing Wu received the storage bag from Lu Ping with both hands. His face was filled with joy. However, as if he thought of something, his face turned gloomy. His companion behind him was also excited. Obviously, he didn't expect that a piece of ceramic shard could be exchanged for so many cultivation resources. After Tsing Wu received the storage bag, he looked at Lu Ping with a pleading expression. Then, he turned around and gathered his companions together. No one knew what they were discussing. Lu Ping saw that Tsing Wu was somewhat intelligent, so he wasn't in a hurry and continued to look at the fragments on the ground. Chapter 429. Ha! At this moment, a female cultivator with a seductive figure walked out from the crowd. Her beautiful eyes swept over the cultivators present. When she saw Lu Ping, she was stunned for a moment, but she quickly smiled again and said, "So it's the famous water sword immortal. How can I say that senior brother Qiao Weijie of Xianling sect, who has always been known for his fiery temper, is surprisingly quiet this time?" Xianling sect's enlightened master Qiao Weijie snorted coldly. His face flushed red, but he didn't refute. Lu Ping glanced at the female enlightened master coldly and ignored the Shui Yan Pavilion cultivator's provocative words. However, the surrounding cultivators exclaimed in surprise. Nowadays, among the new rising cultivators in the North Sea, the most famous ones were Jinling sect's water sword immortal, Lu Xianping, and Xianling sect's wind sword immortal, Ouyang Weijian, who was ranked 19th on the North Sea rookie list. In terms of cultivation, battle records, and true strength, these two were far superior to cultivators of the same level. They had even defeated cultivators with higher cultivation levels than them. If not for their short cultivation time and the fact that they had just advanced to the mid-stage core forging stage, they would have long been ranked in the top 10 of the rookie list. Previously, Xianling sect's Qiao Weijie didn't recognize Lu Ping. Just as he was about to attack him, a cultivator from the Flying Feather sect stopped him. Only then did he realize that this young cultivator was Jinling Lu Xianping, who was as famous as his sect's genius sword cultivator, Ouyang Weijian. Qiao Weijian knew Ouyang Weijian's strength. When Ouyang Weijian had just advanced to the mid-stage core forging stage, Qiao Weijie, who was at the 5th stage core forging stage, was easily defeated by Ouyang Weijian. Now, the person in front of him was actually someone stronger than junior brother Ouyang. Qiao Weijie might be impulsive and easily angered, but he wasn't a fool. Naturally, he wouldn't cause trouble for Lu Ping. The female cultivator from the Shui Yan Pavilion didn't feel embarrassed when she saw that everyone was ignoring her. Her eyes wandered as if she had thought of something. She said, "I'm Shui Xiu from the Shui Yan Pavilion. Senior brother, there are too many people here. This isn't a good place to discuss things. Why don't we go to the tea house and have some spirit tea? I'll treat. What do you think?" Most of the onlookers were blood refining and blood condensation cultivators from the mortal market. Although they were dissatisfied with enlightened Master Shui Xiu's words, they didn't dare to say anything. They watched as Lu Ping and the others walked towards a tea house outside the mortal market. Tsing Wu and the others were the root of this dispute. They didn't dare to say anything. They lowered their heads and followed the few enlightened masters into the tea house. Perhaps it was because Tsing Wu said something to his companions, but the 6 of them intentionally or unintentionally followed Lu Ping. Lu Ping didn't mind. He entered the private room of the tea house and sat down on a seat. The owner of the tea house was a perceptive person. When he saw that 6 intermediate core forging cultivators had come in, he knew that they had something important to discuss. Without any instructions, he immediately led them to a secluded tea house. He immediately served the top-grade spirit tea and left with the tea boy. At this time, in the tea house, besides Lu Ping, Qiao Weijie, Shui Xiu, a cultivator from the Flying Feather sect, Tsing Wu, and the others, there were 2 other core forging cultivators. Obviously, they were also the core forging cultivators who were present just now. Lu Ping and the others just sat quietly in the tea house and enjoyed the tea. No one spoke. Tsing Wu and the others stood in the tea house, not knowing what to do. When the 6 core forging enlightened masters had drunk 2/3 of the spirit tea in their hands, enlightened Shui Xiu of the Shui Yan Pavilion smiled and made a few hand signs. A layer of misty water vapor suddenly floated in the tea house. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and found that the tea house was surrounded by a faint layer of almost invisible mist. This layer of mist could block the probing of divine sense and prevent the content of their conversation from being heard by others. Senior brothers, you can say what your plans are now. But before we discuss the important matters, shouldn't you introduce yourselves first? Since this little sister has spoken first, I will throw out a brick to start a jade. This little sister is Shui Xiu, the 4th disciple of enlightened Shui Qingru of the Shui Yan Pavilion. Qiao Weijie of the Xianling sect, the disciple of enlightened Lu Xiuheng. Lu Ping was stunned. Lu Ping had seen this enlightened master Lu Xiuheng on Frost Island before. He was a very famous late core forging realm cultivator of Xianling sect. He also had hopes of breaking through to the Transcendence realm. Fei Yu sect's Han Fei, the disciple of enlightened master Zhao Wuji. When it was Lu Ping's turn, Lu Ping just said indifferently, "Zhenling Lu Xianping," and no longer said anything. Qiao Weijie sneered and said, "You are very arrogant. You don't even need to introduce your own master. I think Brother Lu will establish his own sect in the future." Lu Ping glanced at Qiao Weijie and smiled faintly, but he didn't say anything. His eyes were full of contempt. Qiao Weijie saw Lu Ping's expression, and the hostility on his body became more and more fierce, but there was also some fear in his eyes. The people in the tea room saw this, but no one said anything. Xianling sect and Zhenling sect had been fighting for a long time. Both sects occupied a special position in the North Sea. When the 2 sects were fighting, most of the other sects would remain neutral or silent. No one would participate. Qiao Weijie finally restrained the hostility on his body. He just stared at Lu Ping with a pair of eyes that seemed to want to devour him. Lu Ping, however, was very calm. He filled the teacup with the boiling spirit spring water again. When Dao Master Shui Xiu saw that the fight between the two wouldn't escalate, she smiled at the other two core forging realm cultivators and asked, "The two of you are from the Siyu sect? This little sister greets you. May I know how to address you?" The two core forging cultivators who came in with her quickly stood up and returned the greeting. Although the sect they belonged to was also famous in the North Sea, it was obviously not on the same level as the top 10 sections. The mid-stage core forging cultivator answered very politely, "Fairy Shui Xiu is too polite. We are indeed from Yu Hai sect. I am Qian Shu, and this is my junior brother, Yang Sanyang. Greetings, fellow Taoists." Lu Ping and the others also greeted them. Although Yu Hai sect was not a big sect in the North Sea, it was still a sect that was overseen by Fa Xiang Laozu. Lu Ping's arrogance was only directed at Xianling sect. Lu Ping and the others also had to treat cultivators from famous sects in the North Sea like Yu Hai sect politely. Even if they could not rope them in, they must not easily become enemies with them. When Dao Master Shui Xiu saw that everyone already knew each other, she clapped her hands and said, "Since everyone knows each other, it must be fate. Now that there are no outsiders here, we can speak frankly. It seems that these few blood condensation realm cultivators have discovered a cave abode of a predecessor. Moreover, judging from the miscellaneous items here, I'm afraid these few young friends have gained quite a lot." Other than Lu Ping, the other enlightened masters' eyes were fixed on Tseng Wu and the others. The 6 of them stood in the middle of the tea room, sweating profusely as if they were carrying a heavy burden on their backs. Tseng Wu gritted his teeth and said nothing. His expression fluctuated as if he had already guessed the enlightened master's goal. His companions behind him were at a loss. Lu Ping waved his hand, and the cultivators immediately felt relieved. Tseng Wu looked gratefully at Lu Ping. Qiao Weijie snorted coldly and said nothing. Everyone also turned to look at Lu Ping. Dao Master Shui Xiu frowned slightly and said, "Senior brother Lu, do you have any objections?" Lu Ping's face was cold and he didn't say anything. Instead, Tseng Wu suddenly took out a few items from his interspatial pouch and placed them on the table. He said, "Seniors, these are the treasures we found in the cave dwelling in the ocean. Now, not only can we not use these treasures, but they will also attract the covetous eyes of others. Therefore, we would like to present these treasures to the seniors so that we can make the best use of them." As soon as Tseng Wu finished speaking, the expressions of his 5 companions changed. One of them, a female cultivator, shouted, "Big brother Tseng, you can't. These are treasures we obtained after risking our lives." Tseng Wu decisively said, "All right, I will explain this matter to you later. For now, it's settled." The female cultivator didn't say anything. Her companions also revealed resentful expressions. But, they didn't have the courage to refute in front of the Tao masters. Qiao Weijie proudly glanced at Lu Ping. But, he saw that Lu Ping happened to glance at Tseng Wu, and his eyes revealed a trace of admiration. Qiao Weijie felt a little strange, but he didn't care about Lu Ping's expression. Instead, he said, "Brother Lu, this is considered as a dog trying to catch a mouse. They may not appreciate it." Lu Ping didn't pay any attention to Qiao Weijie's ridicule. Qiao Weijie had asked for a rebuff, so he awkwardly shut his mouth and didn't speak anymore. Dao Master Shui Xiu saw that Qiao Weijie had suffered a setback. She was afraid that the 2 of them would fight again. So, she hastily said, "How about this? You all give us your storage magic tools, and we will only take away the things that you found in the senior cultivator's cave mansion that are useful to us. Of course, we won't take advantage of you for free. We will leave enough spirit stones and elixirs for you to use in your cultivation." Tseng Wu's face turned pale when he heard this. He knew that these so-called senior cultivators had their eyes on the things left behind in the cave mansion that they had found. He thought that these senior cultivators would more or less let them go after he took out his harvest from the cave mansion. However, at this moment, they had a deeper understanding of the cultivation world. The law of the jungle was admittedly the immortal truth of the cultivation world. However, the true experts in the cultivation world weren't those cultivators with profound cultivation bases, but the great clans and sections. They were the true predators that stood at the highest level of the cultivation world. Lu Ping knitted his brows tightly. He wasn't disgusted by this kind of behavior. In the past, the great clans and sects had been the ones who carried out the most extortion in the cultivation world. For example, the large spirit stone mine on the Frost Island had originally been monopolized by the 10 great sects and schools. Later on, the 10 great sects and schools, which were second only to the 10 great sects and schools, had joined forces. They had only managed to get 30% of the share from the 10 great sects and schools. However, the level of extortion by the great clans and sects and schools was too high. Ordinary cultivators couldn't feel this kind of inequality, and thus couldn't empathize with them. As a matter of fact, what Dao Master Shui Xiu and the others had done was within Lu Ping's expectations. He wouldn't have tried to stop them, as that would have isolated Lu Ping. However, at this moment, Lu Ping felt pity for them. He didn't want these cultivators to die in front of him because they had resisted such humiliation. As expected, as soon as Dao Master Shui Xiu's voice faded away, a male cultivator behind Seng Wu shouted angrily, "You've gone too far. You've gone too far. We'd rather die than submit." Dao Master Shui Xiu's previously smiling face turned frosty. Yang Sanyang, a cultivator at the early stage of the core forging realm from the UC sect, rebuked him angrily, "How dare you? Youngsters, you're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack and kill the 6 people. However, before Dao Master Yang Sanyang could attack, Seng Wu and the others were suddenly surrounded by a dense blue light. A few miserable shrieks came from within the blue light. When the blue light dissipated, Seng Wu and the others looked at the expressionless Lu Ping in front of them in fright. The other Taoists didn't know what had happened within the blue light. They only saw 6 storage bags in Lu Ping's hands. Lu Ping abruptly opened his palm that was holding the interspatial pouches, and a few sharp sword energies sliced the 6 interspatial pouches in his hand apart. The contents of the interspatial pouches fell to the ground with a clatter. At the side, Dao Master Yang Sanyang's eyes lit up. He reached out to grab one of the black stones. A dense blue light suddenly overflowed from the ground, submerging all the items on the ground. When the blue light spread, Dao Master Yang Sanyang's pupils shrank, but he still grabbed the black stone that was submerged by the blue light without hesitation. However, the surface of his palm was also wrapped in a layer of intense flames like the sun's flames. However, just when the flaming palm came into contact with the blue light, Dao Master Yang Sanyang snorted and withdrew his hand at a speed faster than when he stretched out his hand. Although Seng Wu was imprisoned on the ground by Dao Master Lu Xianping and could not move, his eyes were still there. He clearly saw that when the flaming palm came into contact with the blue light, the flames that were jumping upwards strangely began to jump downwards. It was as if the flames on the palm were attracted downwards by the blue light, and then it was continuously swallowed by the blue light. In just a moment, Dao Master Yang Sanyang's flaming palm was almost only left with the palm, and the flames were completely gone. The blue light on the ground only had a faint layer of ripples. Not only did the light not weaken, but it became even thicker. Dao Master Yang Sanyang's expression was uncertain as he looked at Lu Ping with a trace of fear in his eyes. Another Siyu sect cultivator, Qian Shu, coughed and said, "Junior brother, you were rash this time." After saying that, he politely cupped his hands at Lu Ping and said, "What is Dao Master Lu's rule?" After Lu Ping made his move, for some reason, Qiao Weijia of the Water sect and Han Fei of the Soaring Feather sect all remained silent at the same time. Lu Ping waved his hand, and the few items that had sunk into the blue light, including the black stone that Dao Master Yang Sanyang had tried to snatch, were placed among the items that Seng Wu had handed over. Then, he said, "From my initial understanding of this cave abode, these treasures should have come from the same cave abode. The other items on the ground are all Blood Condensation Realm Cultivators items, so I believe they are of no interest to you. I will return them to these minor repairs to deal with. Dao Master Yang Sanyang snorted unwillingly, then touched his hand that had almost sunk into the blue light. A faint trace of poison had just been forced out by him, turning into a fine, curling substance. He didn't expect that this person's chi of vigor would actually contain poison. Just this trace of poison had cost him so much effort to force it out, and he had almost embarrassed himself in front of everyone. When everyone saw that Lu Ping had actually returned the scattered items on the ground to Tseng Wu and the other 5, they couldn't help but look at each other. Was he going to let them go? It had to be known that this cave abode, Lu Ping and the others could tell that there were precious treasures inside. It was just that these 6 Blood Condensation Realm minor repairs clearly didn't have the ability to excavate it again. After being discovered by everyone, they had no choice but to give up the cave abode that they had obtained. According to everyone's intentions, Tseng Wu and the others were obviously going to be killed. If they were allowed to live, news of them going out to search for a cave abode would definitely spread. At that time, the entire city would be in an uproar, and Lu Ping and the others wouldn't be able to reap all the benefits for themselves. Tseng Wu and the others had already closed their eyes and waited for death. Now, not only did they come back from the brink of death, they even managed to recover a portion of their cultivation resources. How could they dare to have any more extravagant hopes? Daoist Shui Xiu frowned and said doubtfully, "Senior brother Lu, isn't this a little inappropriate?" Lu Ping didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Tseng Wu and the others and asked, "Which of you will be the guide?" Tseng Wu clenched his teeth and said, "Senior, this junior is willing to go. But, please let these junior's companions go." Lu Ping didn't say anything. Instead, he suddenly glared at Tseng Wu, and the 5 companions behind him lost consciousness at the same time. Lu Ping snapped his fingers, and the pocket-sized man's expression changed. He found that a hole had suddenly appeared in the restriction spell he had set up in the tea room with the snap of Lu Ping's fingers. The sound of the finger snap spread out of the tea room. After a while, a knocking sound came from the tea room's door. Daoist Shui Xiu had no choice but to reopen the restriction spell of the tea room. The door opened, and the boss of the tea room stood at the door. He bowed and said, "What can I do for you, masters?" The boss of the tea room stood outside the door with his eyes drooped. He didn't seem to care about the situation in the tea room. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and threw out a jade token. He then said, "Send these cultivators to Jinling Huangli Island and hand them over to Master Hu. You only need to give this jade token to Master Hu when the time comes." The boss of the tea room respectfully complied and called a few tea boys to carry the people out. Daoist Shui Xiu rearranged the restriction spell of the tea room in a somewhat displeased manner. She said, "Master Lu, you really don't need to worry. Aren't you afraid that the boss will wake these people up and reveal our whereabouts?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "The boss of the tea room won't do anything stupid in the snowy mist palace." Everyone in the tea room felt a chill in their hearts. The distance from the tea room to the snowy mist palace was 8 to 9 miles. This distance was enough to cover the range of a late-core forging cultivator's divine sense. In other words, Lu Ping's current divine sense was no weaker than a late-core forging cultivator's. Chapter 430. After sending off Tseng Wu's 5 companions, everyone's eyes fell on the dozens of objects placed on the ground. Lu Ping didn't stand on ceremony and took the lead to look at all the objects on the ground. Although Qiao Weijie and Dao Master Shui Xiu didn't look too good, neither of them said anything. At this time, after the short contest, everyone in the tea house had undoubtedly recognized Lu Ping's strength. Lu Ping being the first to choose the objects on the ground was a manifestation of this recognition. When Lu Ping returned to his seat, he was already holding 3 objects in his hand. One of them was the black stone that Dao Master Yang Sanyang wanted at the beginning. Seeing that the black stone was picked up by Lu Ping, Dao Master Yang Sanyang's eyes twitched, but he didn't say anything. Lu Ping threw a bottle of medicinal pills to Tseng Wu and said, "This bottle of medicinal pills is already useless to me, but it will be quite useful for your future cultivation." At this time, the shackles on Tseng Wu's body had been removed by Lu Ping. Tseng Wu, who regained control of his body, still stood cautiously in the tea house, not daring to show a trace of emotion on his face. After Lu Ping, Qiao Weijie picked 2 more objects, followed by Dao Master Shui Xiu and Dao Master Qian Shu of Yu Hai Sect. After Dao Master Han Fei of Soaring Feather Sect picked 2 more objects, the remaining 3 objects were just some ordinary top-grade spiritual materials and blood condensation realm medicinal pills. Naturally, Dao Master Yang Sanyang didn't care about these things. He just casually kept the objects on the ground. While everyone was choosing their items, Lu Ping waited quietly on the side. Of the 3 items he had chosen earlier, other than the bottle of medicinal pellets that was specially chosen for Tseng Wu, the black stone was called the Crimson Flame Stone. It was a fire attribute heaven and earth unique treasure. Unlike other fire attribute heaven and earth unique treasures that existed in the form of fire seeds, the Crimson Flame Stone itself wasn't a fire seed. However, it had a unique property: it could temporarily enhance the quality of other fire seeds. In fact, Lu Ping knew of several similar methods. For example, he could use wood elemental spirit materials as fuel or use spirit stones to cast spirit explosion art. All of these methods could enhance the fire seed's power. However, these methods only enhanced the fire seed's power and not its grade. But this Crimson Blaze Rock was different. When used in conjunction with the fire seed's power would be enhanced to a whole new level until the Crimson Blaze Rock was completely burned away by the fire seed. Although the mysterious sky spirit burning fire could also be enhanced by a level with the support of spirit stones, that was only the characteristics of the mysterious sky spirit burning fire. Without the Scarlet Flame Stone, other fire seeds would not have such a function. Lu Ping played with the Scarlet Flame Stone in his hand and was a little hesitant. If he also put the Scarlet Flame Stone into the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash, the power of the heaven and earth strange fire in the Thunder calabash would definitely be greatly enhanced, but the number of fire seeds would not increase, and there would still be only 1 strange fire. After thinking about it, Lu Ping temporarily put away the Scarlet Flame Stone and did not put it into the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash. The other item was a 2nd-grade peak-grade spiritual material. It was also a treasure that Lu Ping planned to use to enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. After the Golden Scale Sword was upgraded to a spiritual treasure by Lu Ping, the quality of the Golden Scale Sword could no longer be guaranteed to continue increasing the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. If he wanted to carve the 5th or 6th spiritual treasure restriction on the Golden Scale Sword, he would need to enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. Previously, when Lu Ping chose a large piece of crystal jade from Tian Shui Laozu's treasury, it was for this purpose. Now, Lu Ping discovered that among the spiritual materials that Tseng Wu and the rest found in the cave, there was actually an emerald jade. This was also a 2nd-grade spiritual material that could be used to enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. With these 2 spiritual materials in hand, Lu Ping was confident that he could enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword to the point where it could withstand the 5th spiritual treasure restriction. As for the 6th spiritual treasure restriction, it might be a little difficult. After all, Lu Ping knew very little about refining weapons. He needed to ask Chen Lian before he could know. After Reverend Yang Sanyang kept the remaining 3 items, Reverend Shui Xiu smiled and said, "There's no time to lose. It's better for us to hurry to the cave as soon as possible." Everyone knew that they were most afraid of accidents happening in this kind of matter. Therefore, after the group of 7 came out from the tea house, they hurriedly walked out of the Universal Island. Suddenly, a clear bird cry came from the sky above the depths of the sea. Suddenly, a huge black dot appeared on the distant sea surface. The black dot's speed was extremely fast. Just as the bird cry was heard, the black dot had already flown close to them. It was a huge Luan bird. The green and red-colored tail feathers made the Luan bird look majestic. The one bird flew to the sky above the sea, and circled back and forth twice. It seemed as if it was confirming something. Then, two human silhouettes suddenly appeared on the back of the one bird, and slowly floated down from it. Tsing Wu stood behind Lu Ping. Lu Ping used his divine sense to explore the surroundings of the seabed. Then, he casually asked, "Is this the place?" Tsing Wu respectfully replied from behind Lu Ping, "Yes, it's here. Last time, we chased after a demonic beast in this place. We happened to find the cave at the bottom of the sea." Lu Ping nodded. He stood on the sea surface and didn't move. The huge Luan bird in the sky suddenly chirped twice. Its body rapidly shrank in the sky. Finally, it turned into a beautiful green and red bird that was more than a foot long. It landed on Lu Ping's shoulder and started to sing. Its clear and melodious cry spread far and wide on the sea surface. The demonic beasts that were cruising in this part of the sea seemed to have received some kind of signal when they heard the little bird's song. Then, they started to avoid it one after another. After a while, a few rays of light appeared in the sky and rushed towards Lu Ping's direction at high speed. After the rays of light descended, Daoist Shui Xiu, Qiao Weijie, and the other 4 people emerged from the rays of light. Everyone looked at the little bird on Lu Ping's shoulder, and their faces revealed a look of amazement. At the same time, they looked at Lu Ping with an even more intense look of dread in their eyes. Daoist Shui Xiu smiled and said, "Senior brother Lu's demon pet is very fast. We can't catch up to it." Lu Ping smiled and didn't say anything. Instead, he pointed to the sea surface and said, "The cave should be at the bottom of the sea. Since everyone is here, let's get started." Lu Ping's voice had barely faded when his figure suddenly transformed into 2 masses of flowing water. He drilled into the sea along with Tsing Wu, and disappeared without a trace. Everyone glanced at each other. They didn't dare to lag behind, and each of them displayed their own methods. Daoist Shui Xiu's figure exploded, and turned into a mass of water mist. Then, he shrunk back into the sea. Qiao Weijie looked at the position where Lu Ping and Daoist Shui Xiu had disappeared into the sea. He sneered twice, and his figure smashed into the sea. A loud sound was heard along with the soaring waves. When the sea surface calmed down, he had already disappeared without a trace. Han Fei, Qian Shu, and Yang Sanyang also displayed their own methods, and went deep into the sea. There was a towering underwater mountain range only 100 feet away from the sea surface. Everyone once again went more than 1,000 feet deep into the sea. Then, they found the entrance to a cave in a hidden location on the mountainside of the underwater mountain range. They waited until they had gone more than 100 feet into the cave. But, they found that the seawater was blocked by a layer of light shield after they had gone more than 100 feet into the cave. Everyone knew that this should be the effect of the cave's formation. Daoist Shui Xiu and the others entered the cave. They found that there was a spacious hall in the cave. It seemed as if the belly of the entire mountain range had been hollowed out. Chapter 431. Looking at the empty hall in the middle of the mountain, it was obvious that the things here had been looted by Tsing Wu and his companions. Finally, the important things had been seized from them by Lu Ping and the others. Tsing Wu looked around the empty hall. He tried his best to calm down. Moreover, he could tell from the conversation of the few spiritual masters that there must be some secret in this cave mansion that Tsing Wu and his companions had yet to discover. However, his eyes were still filled with curiosity. How could these spiritual masters discover something in this empty hall that they hadn't discovered? However, before Tsing Wu's wish could be fulfilled, Qiao Weijie looked at Lu Ping. Tsing Wu's mind seemed to have received a heavy blow, and his consciousness suddenly became fuzzy. Lu Ping said lightly, "He won't wake up for 5 days." Qiao Weijie sneered, but didn't say anything. Spiritual Master Shui Xiu said with a smile, "Senior brother Lu's divine sense cultivation is amazing. Since it's 5 days, it shouldn't be wrong." Seeing that Sengwu had fainted on the ground, Daoist Han Fei's footsteps paused, and the entire mountainside shook with a rumbling sound, as if an earthquake was going to happen. The ground a few feet in front of everyone suddenly collapsed, and a pitch-black hole appeared in front of everyone. At the same time, a dense spiritual energy gushed out from the hole. Everyone's face lit up with joy. They walked towards the hole. Lu Ping didn't follow everyone in. Instead, he made a few hand signs. A blue halo overflowed from Lu Ping's palm, and wrapped around Sengwu, who had fainted on the ground. Then, the blue halo gradually faded until it disappeared. Sengwu also disappeared from the ground. Lu Ping used his divine sense to explore the ground under his feet. Then, he walked towards the hole in the ground with satisfaction. The hole in the ground was a flight of stairs that extended diagonally downward. The walls on both sides of the stairs were inlaid with starlight stones. Although they were dim, they could still illuminate the passageway. When Lu Ping walked down the stairs, what appeared in front of him was an underground building complex that was formed by several palaces. This was the real core of this underground cave mansion. Lu Ping and the others found some of the more complicated remnants of restrictions among some of the miscellaneous items that Sengwu's companions had taken away. From this, they could infer that there must be another world in this cave mansion. The entire building complex was covered by an array. Moreover, within the array, the buildings, passageways, and gardens were protected by layers of colorful restrictions. Obviously, in order to obtain benefits from this small building complex, Lu Ping and the others not only had to break through the protective array, but they also had to break through various restrictions. However, restrictions were different from array formations. An array formation was like a wall used to protect the cave mansion, while restrictions were like the various traps set up in the buildings and passageways of the cave mansion. When a cave mansion's protective array was broken through, it was just like when a city's city wall was broken through. However, just like the invaders who broke through the city wall would have to face more severe street battles, the foreign cultivators who broke through the protective array would also have to face these complicated and intertwined restrictions. When Lu Ping walked to the front of the protective array, he found that there were already 3 broken holes on the top of the array. At this time, the holes were slowly closing under the operation of the array. Obviously, it was the masterpiece of Qiao Weijie and the others who had arrived here first. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping understood that these 3 holes should have been opened by Qiao Weijie and Han Fei, Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang, and Reverend Xue Xiu. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't enter through these 3 holes. Needless to say, Lu Ping knew that after these 3 holes were opened, they would be followed by many restrictive spells and traps to prevent the later cultivators from taking the path of retreat of those who entered first. Once Lu Ping entered, he would immediately be discovered by the cultivators who opened the path before him, and would regard Lu Ping as an enemy. Moreover, he would also have to face the restrictive spells and traps and ambushes set up by those cultivators who entered first. In this way, it would instead delay Lu Ping's exploration of this cave mansion. After thinking for a moment, Lu Ping first pulled De Bao out from the golden house that he was carrying on his chest. Then, De Bao's sharp beak and several long whiskers arched against the ground twice. His 2 front paws that were buried under his fat body barely scratched the ground twice. Then, he turned his head and gave 2 squeaks towards Lu Ping. As expected, Lu Ping nodded his head. The ground here had already been sealed by the array. Obviously, it was impossible for De Bao to enter the array by burrowing through the ground. Lu Ping pointed at a spot in the array and a white bolt of lightning descended. The area that was struck by the lightning suddenly froze and gradually cracked. Then, Lu Ping sent out 2 more bolts of lightning in succession and the cracked barrier suddenly shattered. Then, Lu Ping walked into the array with a fat mouse following behind him. After Lu Ping and De Bao entered the array, the cracks in the array that were covered in frost began to glow again. The frost gradually melted and the broken barrier began to slowly recover like the 3 holes from before. After entering the array, the density of the spirit force became even denser. The size of this underground palace wasn't too large and couldn't be compared to the heavy profound cave mansion. However, from the squeaks that came from Debeo, the density of the spirit force here was about the size of 5 or 6 small spirit veins. Debeo scratched the ground a few more times and could only helplessly follow behind Lu Ping. It was clear that even the ground in the array had been sealed. This made Debeo, who had always played the role of the vanguard in Lu Ping's exploration, at a loss what to do. Even though Lu Ping entered the array, there were restrictions everywhere that blocked Lu Ping's divine sense. However, from the roars coming from all directions, it could be seen that the others were already impatiently breaking the array. Just as Lu Ping was about to walk forward, Debeo bit his pants. Lu Ping turned around and followed Debeo 2 steps to the side. A few gray halos formed a spider web-like restriction, blocking Lu Ping's vision. Lu Ping carefully examined the restriction in front of him with his divine sense. At the same time, a blue light flashed in his eyes. A moment later, Lu Ping made a few hand seals and a layer of light suddenly disappeared in front of Lu Ping. However, the other 2 layers were still flashing. Lu Ping thought about it carefully and made a few more hand seals. The second light barrier gradually faded away. Then, Lu Ping made another hand seal that was shrouded in a blue light barrier. Only then did the second light barrier break. However, when it came to the third light curtain, Lu Ping continuously changed several different hand seals, but he could no longer break it. Lu Ping's hand seals were partly guided by Yang Xianfeng, but most of them were figured out by Lu Ping from the mysterious purple jade slip he obtained from Fei Ling Island. Lu Ping had gained a lot from the mysterious restriction techniques he learned in Zhongxian's cave dwelling. Although they were still useful in this cave dwelling, they weren't as handy as they were in Zhongxian's cave dwelling. In desperation, Lu Ping opened his palm and 5 sharp sword qi shot out from his fingers. They circled in the air and stirred towards the third light curtain. Suddenly, the light curtain was shredded into pieces. Lu Ping looked at the things behind the light curtain and felt a little strange. There were a total of 24 pots of different shapes and colors of 7 feet tall coral placed on the ground. Most of these corals were treasures that had been bred in the sea for at least thousands of years. They were condensed from the essence of a variety of spiritual materials. Therefore, they could not be directly used to refine a variety of magic tools. However, in the hands of a tool refiner, a large number of rare spiritual materials could be separated from them and then used to refine magic tools. Moreover, because these corals were old and mature, most of the spiritual materials contained within them had reached the level of top-tier spiritual materials. After being separated, they could be used to refine other top-tier magic tools. After Lu Ping put 22 of these corals into his storage ring, the last 2 corals made Lu Ping happy again. These 2 corals were slightly shorter than the other 22 corals, but the spirit halos contained within them were much denser than the other corals. Lu Ping's eyes shone with green light. After a long time, he happily put these 2 corals into the golden house. The spiritual materials contained within these 2 corals had obviously been affected by the spirit object of the heaven and earth. They had mutated into second-tier, top-tier spiritual materials. However, Lu Ping could not find any trace of the spirit object of the heaven and earth in the corals even after using the true pupils of 3 pure ones. After a while, he realized that these corals were obviously found by the owner of the cave. If there was a spirit object of the heaven and earth in these corals, it would have been taken away by the owner of the cave long ago. Lu Ping turned around and continued to walk towards the inner part of the cave. At this time, the rumbling sounds of magic arts resounded in succession from other directions. Judging from the direction of the sound and the hole that was opened outside the magic array, Lu Ping deduced that the most intense rumbling sounds were coming from Qiao Weijie and Han Fei. Judging from the current situation, these 2 were obviously the fastest in their progress. Following closely behind them was Daoist Shui Xiu, not Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang. However, there were very few rumbling sounds coming from Daoist Shui Xiu's direction. Usually, there would only be a few explosive sounds after a period of time. Moreover, compared to the direction where the previous rumbling sounds came from, Daoist Shui Xiu had undoubtedly advanced towards the innermost layer of the cave. It seemed that this Daoist Shui Xiu should be a cultivator proficient in the art of breaking restrictions. Previously, he had been using the art of breaking restrictions to advance. Only when he encountered a restriction that he could not break would he have no choice but to use magic arts to forcibly break it. This was the reason why the interval between the rumbling sounds coming from Daoist Shui Xiu's direction was so long. The slowest ones were Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang from Siyu sect. Although their progress was slow, they were very rhythmic in breaking the restrictions. They weren't like Qiao Weijie and Han Fei, who didn't hesitate to use their true essence to bombard the restrictions indiscriminately. Clearly, these two brothers had a tacit understanding with each other. Lu Ping was secretly vigilant. At the same time, he unconsciously sped up the speed of breaking the restrictions. He chased after the others. At the same time, the house of gold on his chest radiated with golden light. Then, 3 8 or 9-year-old boys and a 12 or 13-year-old girl appeared behind Lu Ping. Lu Bai, Lu Hai, and Lu Ling will follow father to break the restrictions. Qin will be responsible for defending against all kinds of traps and attacks when the restrictions are forcibly broken. As a matter of fact, the Blue Phoenix's explosive attacks were the fastest way to break the restrictions. However, the counterattacks of the restrictions would be more powerful and endless. Therefore, Lu Ping would be tired of dealing with them. Therefore, Lu Ping simply let Samling assist him in breaking the restrictions. Samling's combined strength was above that of the Blue Phoenix, which had already advanced to the second layer of core forging realm. Moreover, although Samling's attacks weren't as violent and grand as the Blue Phoenix's, their might wasn't the slightest bit weaker. Lu Ping could directly break some restrictions by using the restriction-breaking technique. If he couldn't, Samling would immediately join forces to assist Lu Ping in breaking the restrictions by force. The counterattacks of the restrictions would be blocked by Lu Qiner. De Bao would also raise 1 or 2 earth walls from the ground from time to time. However, most of them would be crushed as easily as breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. 1 man and 4 demons advanced together. In a short while, their progress had surpassed Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang of the UC sect. They were approaching Daoist Shui Xiu's progress. Moreover, they were hindered by De Bao from time to time. Under De Bao's strong request, they broke the restrictions on both sides. This had affected Lu Ping's progress. However, De Bao had discovered a few withered spiritual herb gardens among these broken restrictions. He had harvested a lot of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs from them. There were also a dozen 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs that had survived by luck. And, Lu Ping had personally plucked them. The layout of this underground cave mansion was extremely compact. There were 4 lofts distributed around the central palace. Lu Ping was approaching one of them. He was sitting in the direction of the other loft. Qiao Weijie and Han Fei had already broken the restrictions of the loft. The booming sound of magic spells was getting more and more intense. It seemed as if the loft would also collapse under the bombardment. Lu Ping's progress had already caught up with Daoist Shui Xiu. Lu Ping was delighted when he saw the restriction in front of the loft. His hands were like butterflies flying through flowers. He made 42 hand gestures in succession. A loud rumbling sound was heard. The light curtain of the restriction in front of Lu Ping suddenly collapsed backward. Then, a 5-colored door appeared in front of Lu Ping. De Bao didn't wait for Lu Ping to call out to him. He had already rushed into the loft. Lu Ping instructed Samling to guard the door. Then, he and Lu Qiner followed De Bao into the loft. There were many bookshelves placed against the walls of the loft. Not only were there many paper books, but there were also piles of wooden slips. There were also some jade slips placed on top of them. An ordinary wooden table was placed in the middle of the loft. A teapot and 4 teacups were placed on top of it. One of the teacups was not inverted on the table like the other 3 teacups. Instead, it was placed on the edge of the wooden table where the reclining chair was placed. The tea in the teacup had already dried up. There were only faint tea stains and dust that were about to cover the tea stains. There was an open paper book on the edge of the teacup. It was also covered with dust. It seemed as if the owner of the cave mansion was enjoying tea and reading in this loft at a specific time. Lu Ping saw a thin bulge on the dusty book. His heart stirred. He waved his hand to brush off the dust on the book. A thin jade slip was revealed. Lu Ping was delighted. He hastily used his divine sense to explore the contents of the jade slip. Lu Ping slowly put down the jade slip after some time. Then, he carefully placed it in his storage ring. After that, he started to walk back and forth among the bookshelves in the loft. De Bao dragged a clay pot out of nowhere, and ran towards Lu Ping. Chapter 432. The old man, Qingjian, has been practicing for more than 900 years, and has been in the Dharma stage for more than 200 years. The old man knew that he would not be able to survive the calamity of the mid-Dharma stage, so he had been struggling with his limited training for the past few decades. Now that his lifespan had been exhausted, he had no choice but to face the calamity. If he were to die here, I will pass on the legacy of the old man. Lu Ping understood the above information from a jade scroll that was placed on top of the opened book. Clearly, this was a message that Qingjian Laozu had left behind in a hurry before he had to face the calamity of the mid-Dharma stage. However, after this message, it recorded Qingjian Laozu's techniques, as well as Qingjian Laozu's experiences in training. From the blood condensation stage all the way to the early Dharma stage, Qingjian Laozu had condensed his 900 years of training experience into a jade scroll. He had also tried his best to answer all the questions that might arise at each stage of training. Although Lu Ping could not directly inherit this technique, the experiences in training were extremely important for Lu Ping's future training. Furthermore, this was a set of techniques that could be directly trained to the mid-Dharma stage. Although Qingjian Laozu had only trained to the early Dharma stage, if he brought this set of techniques back to Jinling, it would be a well-known set of techniques and a strong foundation. The Jade Scroll also gave a simple explanation of the cave-dwelling situation. However, it was different from the cultivation technique inheritance that had been prepared long ago. The introduction to the cave-dwelling itself was extremely brief, and even the first paragraph recorded in the Jade Scroll seemed to have been written in a hurry. Lu Ping couldn't help but suspect that Ancestor Clearstream had been reading and sipping tea in the study when the mid-stage Dharma stage tribulation suddenly descended. Ancestor Clearstream didn't have time to leave any detailed arrangements before he hurriedly went to face the tribulation. In the end, he was annihilated in the tribulation. Lu Ping thought of the pile of debris that Sun Wu and the others had collected in the hall in the middle of the mountain. There were many fragments of treasures that had been destroyed, and there were still remnants of some high-level treasures. Lu Ping could not help but wonder if these fragments, which were obviously treasures, had been destroyed by Qingjian Laozu when he was fighting against the calamity. If that was the case, the place where Qingjian Laozu had gone through the calamity should have been in the hall in the middle of the mountain. Lu Ping followed the general direction that Qingjian Laozu had left in the Jade Scroll and began to look at the books, wooden scrolls, jade scrolls, and other documents that were placed on the shelves around the attic. However, when he walked closer, he realized that the paper books had been corroded by time and had long been reduced to a pile of dust. Some of the threads that connected the wooden scrolls had long been destroyed, and most of the wooden scrolls had also rotted away. Only a small portion of the scrolls could still be seen clearly, and most of them were broken pages. Lu Ping thought about it for a while, then carefully placed all the wooden scrolls that he could see into a jade box for safekeeping, and then placed it in his storage ring. There were dozens of jade scrolls on the bookshelves, which were also the foundation of Qingjian Laozu's cultivation over the years. Lu Ping roughly looked at them. Although the number of jade scrolls was small, the content contained in each one was sufficient. One of the jade scrolls recorded 5 kinds of elixirs for the mid-core forging stage and 3 kinds of elixirs for the late-core forging stage. There were also 2 kinds of elixirs for the half-step to the transcendence stage and 1 for the transcendence stage. This made Lu Ping excited. Now that Lu Ping's cultivation progress had slowed down, he had already collected all kinds of elixir recipes that were suitable for him to take. However, none of the 5 mid-core forging stage elixirs recorded in the Jade Scrolls were currently mastered by Lu Ping. Moreover, the method of alchemy revealed in these elixir recipes was not the same as the usual alchemy style of the North Sea. Obviously, it was not from the North Sea, and the alchemy of the North Sea was of the same origin as the East Sea, so these elixir recipes were obviously not from the East Sea. Of the 2 types of elixirs for the half-step to the transcendence stage, one was used by cultivators who had condensed their golden core, and the other was a type of elixir that helped to break through to the transcendence stage. However, this elixir was more like a secret technique. One was a secret technique that used external force to forcibly raise a 6th-grade golden core cultivator to the transcendence stage. The only elixir for the transcendence stage shocked Lu Ping even more. This elixir recipe was called the minor forging elixir. At the beginning, it stated that this elixir was created based on the peerless elixir of the Fei Ling sect, the spirit forging elixir. Although this elixir did not have the magical effect of directly raising a golden core's rank like the spirit forging elixir, it could help a cultivator achieve the golden core's rank more smoothly by smelting the heaven and earth spirit treasures. Everyone knew that regardless of whether a 9th-layer core forging cultivator refined 1 or 2 low-grade heaven-rank spirit items, they would still have a 7th-grade golden core. However, whether it was in terms of foundation or future achievements, the latter was stronger than the former and had a higher chance of success. However, just this minor spirit forging pill required 36 types of 3,000-year-old spirit grasses. The real spirit forging pill required 49 types of extremely precious 3,000-year-old spirit grasses, and it also required a rare item called the Myriad Wonder Nectar. Unfortunately, Lu Ping didn't even know what the Myriad Wonder Nectar was. As for the minor spirit forging pill, it required a spirit liquid called the Vitality Nectar. This spirit liquid itself was refined from some precious spirit grasses, and its effect was equivalent to a 3-year-old longevity pill. The minor forging elixir was created more than 1,000 years after the destruction of the Fei Ling sect. Although Lu Ping did not know when Qingjian Laozu was born and died, he guessed that it was no more than 3,000 years ago. The other jade slips also contained many records that Lu Ping was interested in. For example, there were records about some rare flowers and herbs, methods to identify natural spirit objects, and some people in the Central Plains. Of course, there were also some cultivation methods and secret techniques that Qingjian Laozu had accumulated for nearly 1,000 years. Of course, there were also some information about refining weapons, formations, talismans, puppets, and so on. Although a cultivator might not be able to reach the pinnacle in one of the 100 arts of cultivation in their lifetime, the only person who could cover such a wide range of knowledge and master it so thoroughly was Laozu. This foundation was even more profound than Qingjian Laozu's cultivation methods in the Dharma realm. With this accumulation, as long as Lu Ping spread his descendants, he could easily establish an independent family in the North Sea in a few hundred years. Lu Ping searched around with his divine thoughts, and at the same time, he also used the 3 pure true eyes. After finding nothing new, Lu Ping turned his attention to a clay pot that De Bao had dragged out from a corner. This clay pot did not look special from the surface, but this thin cylindrical small clay pot still contained half a pot of top-grade spiritual tea, which made Lu Ping's eyes light up. Lu Ping pinched a little of the spiritual tea and put it under his nose to sniff it. It turned out to be the famous refreshing tea in the cultivation world. This kind of spiritual tea had great benefits for calming a cultivator's mind, and it was even beneficial for the cultivation of a cultivator's divine sense or divine thoughts. This kind of spiritual tea was extremely rare in the North Sea, almost on the verge of extinction. Only some Dharma adept Laozu who loved tea might have some in his collection. This spiritual tea had not decayed after thousands of years, and it seemed to be the effect of this clay pot. Lu Ping carefully examined this unusually coarse clay pot, and found that this clay pot actually had the same effect as the infinite wonder jade essence bottle that Lu Ping had seen in the North Sea Palace on Huanyu Island. That was, after thousands of years, the contents stored in the clay pot would not lose their effects. This inconspicuous clay pot was actually a spiritual magic treasure, but using it to store top-grade spiritual tea was overkill. Lu Ping placed the spiritual tea in the clay pot into a jade box, and then put the clay pot into his storage ring. At the same time, he pondered about other uses for the clay pot. After taking away everything that could be taken away, Lu Ping walked out of the attic and continued to walk towards the most central palace of the cave mansion. That should be the most important place in this cave mansion. At this moment, rumbling sounds of magic spells breaking restrictions could be heard coming from other directions. However, the rumbling sounds were only coming from two directions. Other than Xiao Weijie and Han Fei's violent method of breaking restrictions, the interval between Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang's rhythmic method of releasing magic spells had suddenly become longer. Moreover, the speed at which these two people were advancing had become much faster. Now, they were already in front of Xiao Weijie and Yang Sanyang. Previously, there had been no sound coming from Immortal Shui Xiu's direction. The closer they were to the central palace, the more difficult it was to break the restriction traps set up by Qingjian Laozu. Although Lu Ping guessed that Immortal Shui Xiu was proficient in breaking formations and restrictions, it was impossible for him to use magic spells to forcibly break the restrictions. Now that the restrictions had become more complicated, Immortal Shui Xiu's journey was smooth sailing. Therefore, the only possibility was that Reverend Shui Xiu had already joined forces with Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang. This was also the reason why the speed of breaking the restrictive spells in the direction of Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang had caught up and surpassed Xiao Weijie and Yang Sanyang. Moreover, the interval between the sounds of magic spells breaking the restrictive spells had also lengthened. Thinking of this, Lu Ping instructed Samling and Cyan Wan to pay attention to the counterattack of the restrictions in the surroundings. Then, he wielded the golden scale sword and slashed in the direction of the central palace. When one's swordsmanship was cultivated to an extremely high level, there was a saying, no matter how many formations you have, I will only slash them with one sword. There was even an exaggerated title, one sword to break all things. Legend had it that among the seventh patriarch of the heaven-splitting sect, Peng Laozu had the highest cultivation level, but Laozu had mastered the supreme magical power of one sword to break all things. He had suppressed Hu Laozu and Yuan Laozu, who had the same cultivation level as Laozu, and ranked second among the seventh patriarch of the heaven-splitting sect. Even though Laozu was also proficient in swordsmanship, he could only surpass Zhao Laozu by relying on the seven thunder gem gourd in his hand. Lu Ping's sword slash did not have the elegance of one sword to break all things, but these restriction techniques were also far from reaching the level of thousands of formations. Therefore, within a distance of 200 feet in front of Lu Ping, all the restrictions and traps were completely destroyed by the golden scale sword. However, the subsequent counterattack of the restrictions was also blocked by Samling and Cyan Wan. However, these four immortal demon cultivators were thrown into confusion by the joint counterattack of dozens of restrictions. Cyan Wan lost a dozen feathers, and Samling was also in an extremely miserable state. Many of the scales on his body were damaged, and dark red blood seeped out. Chapter 433. Lu Ping's sword cut out a passage of more than 200 feet. The central palace was close at hand, and in front of the central palace was a pool of several square feet. Lu Ping's divine thought seemed to capture something when the long sword cut the enchantment, but it seemed that he got nothing. Samling's scales behind Lu Ping suddenly opened, and the feathers on the neck of Cyan Phoenix also stood up for a while. It seemed to also notice some danger, but then the sharp eyes of the four spiritual pets became a little confused, and the dangerous breath that appeared before suddenly disappeared. Lu Ping's eyes shone with blue light, and he seemed to notice something again, but his hands still didn't move. At this moment, there was a sudden violent fluctuation of spiritual qi in the other two directions. Qiao Weijie's roar came over, and at the same time, there was the painful cry of immortal Yang Sanyang. Not good, there are other people in this cave house. Lu Ping was shocked, and he just said, be careful. Lu Hai had already shouted and stood in front of Lu Ling. At the same time, the protective small magical power lit up, but it was immediately pierced, and then a stream of blood oozed from Lu Ping's shoulder. Lu Ling exclaimed, opened her mouth, and a black cold mist rushed to the front of Lu Hai. A short figure who was trying to escape was suddenly frozen in front of everyone. This black cold mist was the black ice fiend brought back from Frost Island by Lu Ping, and then he let Lu Ling condense it in her protective aura. The black ice fiend was an extremely good treasure among the strange things. Sure enough, the first time Lu Ling used it, she froze a cultivator of core forging stage in the black ice fiend. However, after all, the opponent's cultivation was no less than Lu Ling's. The black ice fiend only temporarily imprisoned the attacker, and then the attacker's spiritual power surged, and the ice covering his body suddenly cracked. However, in this moment, Lu Qing's wind-moving needle pierced into the cracks of the cracked ice. A shrill scream pierced everyone's ears. The layer of ice covering the body of the sneak attacker immediately cracked. A figure had just escaped when his body suddenly became faint, as if he was about to disappear into the air. Then, a blue halberd suddenly stabbed out from behind him, piercing through his abdomen. The attacker opened his mouth and seemed to scream, but his head had already flown up. Lu Ling, with an angry look, held a shining dagger in her hand and said fiercely, how dare you hurt my second brother and make such an unpleasant sound, so noisy. From beginning to end, it was Sam Ling who dealt with the attacker. Other than the warning at the beginning, Lu Ping still stood with his back to Sam Ling, as if he didn't care about what was happening behind him. He didn't even care that the opponent behind him might take the opportunity to stab him in the back. It was as if he had absolute confidence in Sam Ling. Lu Ping wasn't the only one who didn't make a move. Even the azure phoenix circling above the three spirits was carefully scanning its surroundings with its sharp eyes, as if it was on guard against something. It didn't do anything to help the three spirits below. De Bao was even faster. When Lu Ping's sword slashed down, the restriction on the ground seemed to have been cut open by the golden scale sword. De Bao had already taken the opportunity to plunge into the ground, and no one knew where he went. The roars of the battle in the distance became more intense. At this time, not only was Qiao Weijie roaring, but enlightened Master Shui Xiu was also shouting. Standing in front of Sam Ling, Lu Ping still didn't move. His eyes flashed with a green light from time to time, and his mind was constantly observing the surroundings. The situation of Sam Ling and the others was actually under Lu Ping's observation. However, at some point, a small gourd with a dense aura appeared above his head. The green light suddenly converged from Lu Ping's eyes. The gourd above his head spun rapidly, and a burst of electric light flashed on the surface of the gourd. Then, the electric light that had been brewing for a long time shot out from the gourd, falling on the ground around Lu Ping and Sam Ling. Countless electric lights flickered, forming a sea of thunder and lightning around Lu Ping and the others. Een thunder of gung metal, een thunder of een wood, een thunder of een water, een thunder of een earth, een ice, een thunder of een wind. At this moment, the Thunder Seven Treasures calabash finally revealed its ferocious appearance in the cultivation world. This treasure, once known as the #1 divine artifact in the cultivation world, was now far less powerful than when Peng Laozu split the world apart, but how could the title of the #1 divine artifact be undeserved? Even though the Een Thunder of Een Third Fire had not been formed due to the lack of 3 fire attribute natural wonders, the Thunder Seven Treasures calabash still had a long way to go before reaching minor success. Its current power was enough. Lu Ping stood in the middle of the sea of thunder and lightning. Small figures like the one that had attacked Lu Ling earlier screamed in the sea of thunder and lightning. Their bodies were entangled by the electric light, and they fell to the ground, twitching in all kinds of strange ways. Their screams were interrupted as soon as they could be heard. The Thunder Seven Treasures calabash was like a child that had obtained a treasure and needed to show off. After scattering the 6 electric lights around it, it happily jumped twice above Lu Ping's head. Satisfied, it disappeared into the sky and was put back into the core space by Lu Ping. The lightning in the surroundings disappeared, leaving only 12 twitching figures on the ground. 8 of them had already been killed by the 7 treasures lightning calabash's 6 lightning attribute minor magical abilities. The remaining 4 figures also had all kinds of strange injuries on their bodies. After the thunder and lightning dissipated, the 4 seriously injured figures had a look of fear on their faces. They struggled to stand up and seemed to want to escape. The azure phoenix let out a crisp cry and flapped its wings. Another sea of fire swept out. 4 screams of despair rang out, and the 8 corpses on the ground were turned to ashes by Lu Qiner's Samadhi true fire. Lu Ping helplessly looked at Lu Qiner, who was hovering proudly above his head. With this method of killing, he wouldn't be able to obtain any spoils of war in the end. Just as Lu Qiner was circling above everyone's heads, and just as she turned around, a figure that looked exactly the same as before suddenly appeared behind Lu Qiner, with a ruthless expression on his face. He threw out a shimmering water rope towards Lu Qiner's neck. Mid-core forging stage. Lu Ping looked at the figure that was in a sorry state. It was obvious that the figure had escaped from the Thunder 7 Treasures calabash and Lu Qiner's Samadhi true fire. He couldn't help but frown. These things really wouldn't rest until they were dead. Even in this situation, they still risked their lives to attack. Just as the water rope whip was about to tighten around Lu Qiner's neck, a broken flag suddenly appeared above Lu Qiner's head. The flag shook and a wave suddenly surged out, firmly blocking the water rope whip. The cultivator holding the water rope whip was surprised. The soft water rope whip suddenly turned into a long spear and stabbed towards Lu Qiner again. However, the broken flag shook again and another wave surged out, blocking the water spear outside Lu Qiner's body. The short minor repairs cultivator turned around and saw the smiling Lu Ping. He immediately realized that everything was caused by the human in front of him. His ferocious expression made it seem as if he wanted to eat someone. He opened his mouth and let out a mournful roar. The water spear in his hand turned into a huge ghost head water blade and chopped down towards Lu Ping's head. However, the short minor repairs cultivator had only just leapt into the air when his ferocious expression suddenly froze. Next, a look of disbelief appeared on his face. Lowering his head, he saw that a sword had pierced a large hole through his chest. Blood flowed out like clear water from the wound. Behind the short minor repairs cultivator, the dark blue netheraqua sword disappeared once more and the short minor repairs cultivator fell to the ground. This time, the cyan phoenix had learned its lesson. It unleashed a mouthful of flames to incinerate the cultivator on the ground into a clump of thick white smoke. However, the clump of flowing water formed from the large blade was not incinerated. Lu Ping held the clump of flowing water in his hand and examined it carefully. A look of interest appeared on his face. The clump of flowing water rolled back and forth in Lu Ping's palm and changed into various shapes. Although it was only a magic treasure that had condensed 3 treasures, it had many wonderful uses. Lu Ping glanced at Lu Hai, who had a longing look on his face, and could not help but laugh. This magic treasure looked gorgeous, but it was actually not very helpful to Lu Ping. So, he handed the water-like magic treasure to Lu Hai to refine. Seeing Lu Hai excitedly turn the clump of flowing water into a long halberd that was almost twice his height, Lu Ping shook his head and smiled bitterly. After all, he was still a child. Compared to a magic treasure, Lu Hai was more willing to see the clump of flowing water as a toy. An ice azura appeared on Frost Island, and then a water azura appeared inexplicably in this cave mansion. The situation in the world of cultivation is really getting more and more chaotic. Lu Ping knew that when the ice azura was first discovered on Frost Island, even his master, Tianling, Laozu, did not look very good at that time. The blood condensation disciples on Frost Island did not even know what an azura was. Most of the core forging realm cultivators, such as Lu Ping, only knew about it at that time, and were warned by their respective sect masters not to spread this matter. Including the one that attacked Lu Ling at the beginning, a total of 14 water asuras appeared. 8 of them were equivalent to the blood condensation realm water asuras, and 1 of the 5 were equivalent to the core forging realm water asuras. 1 of them was killed by the Samling, and the other 4 were seriously injured by the 7 treasures thunder calabash. They were also burned clean by Lu Qiner's Samadhi true fire. The only core forging realm water asura sneakily attacked Lu Qiner, but it was also killed by the prepared Lu Ping. Lu Ping listened to the sporadic sounds of fighting from the other 2 directions. He knew that the water shura, like the ice shura, had a kind of innate ability that made it difficult for a cultivator's divine sense to detect them. The water shura that besieged the other 2 cultivators must have realized that they couldn't take them down by force, so they resorted to guerrilla warfare. The ice shura and water shura's relentless fighting style was the real headache. Qiao Weijie, Shui Xiu, and the others were obviously being held back by the water shura. Lu Ping immediately snickered in his heart. It's not that I, Jinling, want to take everything for myself. It's your own incompetence. Don't blame me for this. Lu Ping's eyes shone with green light again. He looked at the pool in front of him, and then he seemed to find something. His footsteps paused for a moment, but he still walked toward the central palace in front of him. Chapter 434. Lu Ping had just walked past the small pool in front of the central palace when his divine thoughts suddenly relaxed. Lu Ping's heart tightened. From the small pool to the central palace, there was no longer any obstruction. Thinking of the sudden appearance of the water shura just now, these things obviously could not have come from the outside like they did. There was only one possibility: the group of water shura had directly entered the cave residence. Lu Ping looked back at the small pool behind him again. Just now when Lu Ping used his divine thoughts to explore, he discovered that the small pool, which was only a few dozen feet in radius, was actually bottomless. Even with Lu Ping's divine thoughts, it was difficult to find out where the small pool led to. Could it be that this group of water shura appeared from the small pool? Lu Ping stepped into the central palace with doubts. Although he had previously used his divine thoughts to explore, at this time in the palace the things in the palace had already been looted by the water shura, and it was impossible for there to be any more gains, but Lu Ping still could not help but come to have a look. Just as Lu Ping stepped into the central palace, the fighting sounds from the other 2 directions suddenly changed direction. Lu Ping paused at the entrance of the main hall, only then did he realize that Shui Xiu, Qian Shu, and Yang Sanyang were blocking the sneak attack of the water shura while moving in the direction of Qiao Weijie and the others. A moment later, Qiao Weijie and Han Fei also seemed to notice something and moved in the direction of Shui Xiu and the others. This Han Fei seems to be not stupid. Lu Ping thought to himself. As for Qiao Weijie, Lu Ping did not think that such a person would have such a brain. But in the eyes of Shui Xiu and the others, he did not know who came up with this idea, but in the eyes of Lu Ping, among the 3 of them, besides Yang Sanyang who was foppish, Shui Xiu was smart, and Qian Shu who looked simple and honest was also a fox inside. Either one of them could have come up with this idea. The combined strength of the 5 of them should be more than enough to fend off the water shura. However, with the water shura's low intelligence and its relentless nature, it would not be easy for the 5 of them to completely get rid of it. The central palace was already in a mess. Even though Lu Ping had noticed it in advance, he was still quite discouraged when he saw the scene. Lu Ping wandered around the palace and found the place where Lao Zu usually used to practice. The rich spiritual energy clearly told Lu Ping that this was the place where the whole cave residents gathered of the spiritual veins. Lu Ping roughly felt the concentration of the spiritual energy in this place. It was about 5 small spiritual veins. Lu Ping smiled in his heart and stamped his foot. A blue light immersed into the ground. Lu Ping waited for a moment, but there was no movement from the ground. Lu Ping felt a little strange. He stamped his foot again and a blue light more intense than before entered the ground, but Debeo still did not come out of the ground. Lu Ping's expression changed, and he was about to walk out of the palace. But just as Lu Ping was about to leave the secret cultivation room, his body paused, as if he thought of something. He immediately turned around and carefully searched the cultivation room. Speaking of which, there was nothing special in Patriarch Clearstream's cultivation room. There was a praying mat used for meditation and a low wooden table with a teapot and teacups on it. There were no decorations around the cultivation room. Clearly, Patriarch Clearstream's cultivation room was similar to that of most cultivators, maintaining a simple and painstaking cultivation style. Lu Ping's divine telekinesis was constantly searching for something in the cultivation room. Finally, his eyes were fixed on the futon on the cultivation platform. The futon was clearly a top-grade magic artifact embedded with a spirit-gathering array. It was a good auxiliary artifact for cultivation. Lu Ping's own cultivation room had a similar auxiliary magic artifact. Lu Ping held the futon in his hand and carefully inspected it. His eyes flashed with cyan light. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then, a palm flashing with blue light struck the surface of the futon. The spirit-gathering array engraved on the surface of the futon collapsed and the surface of the top-grade magic artifact was instantly torn apart. Lu Ping shook the futon in his hand and the broken pieces of the futon fell to the ground. A small stone tablet, around 1 foot in length, was revealed. The stone tablet was engraved with 3 bold and powerful words, Clear River Prefecture. Lu Ping chuckled and held the stone tablet in his hand. He activated the real elemental energy in his body and a blue light overflowed from his palm. It extended towards the small stone tablet from top to bottom. When the small stone tablet was completely soaked in the blue light of Lu Ping's real elemental energy, the entire central palace suddenly trembled. Then, everything returned to normal. The blue light on the stone tablet immediately converged and the surface of the stone tablet returned to its original appearance. Lu Ping stood in the training room and stamped his foot again. After a while, Debeo really drilled out from the ground. He looked at Lu Ping and barked twice unhappily. Then, he spat out 3 miniature spirit-gathering pearls with a disdainful expression on his face. It was as if he was saying that such a cave with such a long history and a Dharma manifestation stage cultivator, Laozu, only had 5 small spirit veins and only a few spirit-gathering pearls. Lu Ping did not have time to deal with Debeo. He waved his hand and kept the 3 miniature spirit-gathering pearls. Then, he placed the 2 small traction array plates made by Hu Lily on the 2 small spirit veins in the training room. Then, he carefully engraved a traction array on them. He was ready to return to Huangli Island and guide 2 of the 6 spirit veins back. In the process of carving the array formation, Lu Ping discovered that the spirit veins in the cultivation room were definitely not just 6 small spirit veins. There should have been at least 1 mid-sized spirit vein. However, after 3,000 years, the mid-sized spirit veins were constantly being depleted due to the lack of a spirit-gathering artifact to suppress the spirit veins. After the miniature spirit veins and small spirit veins were led over, as long as a cultivator could casually imprison them, they could ensure that the spirit veins would not be lost for several years or even decades. However, once the spirit veins were condensed and became medium spirit veins, they could be easily imprisoned by cultivators. Only with the suppression of a spirit-gathering treasure could they prevent the medium spirit veins from collapsing. Lu Ping suddenly remembered the pottery shard that looked like a fragment of a spirit-gathering treasure that he had bought from Tseng Wu and the others at the Huangyu Island mortal market. He hurriedly took it out from his storage ring. At that time, Lu Ping had suspected that this pottery shard was a fragment of a spirit-gathering treasure. Now, it seemed that his suspicions were confirmed. As for why this spirit-gathering treasure had appeared in the belly of the mountain above the underground cave, it was easy to explain. Not only could a spirit-gathering treasure leave the medium spirit veins for a short period of time, it could also gather a portion of the spirit chi for the cultivator's use. When Qingjian Laozu was undergoing his tribulation in the belly of the mountain, he had brought this spirit-gathering treasure with him. At the critical moment of the tribulation, he had absorbed the spirit qi to recover the inner yuan in his body. However, it was obvious that he had failed at the last moment. Not only did he turn into ashes, but all the spirit-gathering treasures that he had brought with him were also destroyed. In his inheritance, Qingjian Laozu had repeatedly said that he would not be able to survive the tribulation of the mid-Dharma stage, but in the end, he still wanted to take a gamble. Just as Lu Ping was carving the matrix, Qiao Weijie and the others finally met up. With the 5 of them working together, the water Shura that relied on stealth and sneak attacks were no match for them. At the same time, with the 5 of them working together, they were able to break through the seal much faster. Soon, they arrived at the pool in front of the central palace. When they arrived, they realized that the seal in front of the central palace had already been broken. The 5 of them looked at each other and immediately ran into the palace. At the same time, the ones who ran the most were Qiao Weijie and Yang Sanyang. As Qiao Weijie ran, he was still urging them, "Hurry, hurry, or the treasures inside will be taken away by the people of Jinling." Although Yang Sanyang did not say anything, his feet ran even faster. Qian Shu and Han Fei were both a little helpless. Shui Xiuzhenren looked at the small pool in front of the palace discreetly, then followed the others into the palace. Just as Lu Ping finished carving the last talisman of the traction matrix on the ground, Qiao Weijie had already found the entrance to the training room. Seeing that Lu Ping was here, he immediately said angrily, "Lu, where are the treasures in this palace? You, Jinling, want to take all the treasures for yourself. Aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death?" As Qiao Weijie spoke, he flashed a magic weapon in his hand. It seemed that he would immediately start a fight if there was any disagreement. Then, Yang Sanyang also chased after him. Without saying anything, he immediately took out a magic weapon that looked like a jade ruler and stood beside Qiao Weijie. However, he looked much more embarrassed. Yang Sanyang was the only early-stage core forging cultivator among the group. When they were attacked by Water Azura earlier, Water Azura actually knew that a persimmon should be pinched by the weak, so the first surprise attack was aimed at Yang Sanyang. At this time, Yang Sanyang's appearance was as embarrassing as it could be. His long robe had been pierced by countless holes, blood was oozing from his left arm and right leg, and even his buttocks had been stabbed. Then, Shui Xiuzhenren, Han Fei and Qian Shu also rushed into the secret room. When they saw the situation in the secret room, they did not say anything. When Lu Ping saw that the 5 people had arrived, he slowly stood up and asked Shui Xiuzhenren next to him, "What did Shui Xiuzhenren say?" When Qiao Weijie saw that Lu Ping had turned a blind eye to his words just now, he immediately felt that he was being despised by Lu Ping. His face turned red, and he pointed at Lu Ping and scolded, "Son of a bitch, this time, our 4 sects have joined forces to explore this cave mansion. Before coming here, each of us has informed the elders of each sect. You, Jinling, want to monopolize the treasures in the central palace. Aren't you afraid that the other 3 sects will join forces to condemn you?" Lu Ping's knife-like gaze forced Qiao Weijie to not dare to look directly at him. The words that came out of his mouth were also fearful, but he did not want to show his timidity in front of Lu Ping, so he insisted on finishing his words. However, in the ears of the others, Qiao Weijie's voice, which was previously aggressive, was getting softer and softer, even becoming weak. Yang Sanyang, who had been holding the jade ruler tightly, could not help but loosen his grip. He glanced at the Xianling sect cultivator next to him with slight disappointment. Lu Ping still could not be bothered to look at Qiao Weijie. He still looked at Shui Xiuzhenren and said, "Shui Xiuzhenren, do you really have nothing to say?" Shui Xiuzhenren said indifferently, "There is a pile of dust in the central palace. There are no signs of a recent rebellion. Obviously, before Brother Lu came here, this place had already been plundered by someone." Qiao Weijie was stunned when he heard this. Then, his face turned blood red. He turned his head and glared at Shui Xiu, then turned to look at Lu Ping, as if he had suffered a great humiliation. Shui Xiuzhenren, Qian Shu, and Yang Sanyang left Xiao Weijie's side without a trace, leaving Han Fei standing there awkwardly. Xiao Weijie still did not notice it. The atmosphere in the cultivation room became a little subtle. Lu Ping was bold and skillful, so the others did not dare to make the first move. Xiao Weijie originally wanted to instigate the other two sects to fight against Lu Ping. He did not expect that Lu Ping would easily resolve the situation. Instead, Xiao Weijie was isolated. After a while, Shui Xiuzhenren broke the silence and said, "There are 6 spirit veins here. Senior brother Lu has monopolized 2 of the best ones. Isn't this a little unreasonable?" Chapter 435. Lu Ping looked at Dao Master Shui Xiu and said with a smile, "Then according to Fairy's opinion, how should this spirit vein be divided?" Without waiting for Dao Master Shui Xiu to speak, Dao Master Yang Sanyang had already jumped out impatiently and shouted, "That goes without saying. There are a total of 6 people in this cave dwelling this time. Naturally, 1 for each person." As soon as Dao Master Yang Sanyang's voice fell, Dao Master Shui Xiu's expression was rather displeased. Lu Ping still had a faint smile on his face, while Xiao Weijie simply sneered. Han Fei gave Dao Master Yang Sanyang a very strange look. Qian Shu couldn't stand it anymore at this time. He pulled on Dao Master Yang Sanyang's sleeve and coughed, saying, "My Siyu sect can't compare to the 10 great sections. Us 2 brothers only need to obtain a small spirit vein." Yang Sanyang still had an indignant expression on his face, but was firmly held back by Dao Master Qian Shu. What kind of status did Siyu sect have that it could actually be mentioned in the same breath as the 10 great sects? Did they think that they could get a bigger share of the loot just because 2 people came this time? Lu Ping didn't need to think to know that if Yang Sanyang still didn't know what was good for him and wanted to divide it according to the number of people, then Lu Ping, Xiao Weijie, Shui Xiu, and Han Fei would first join forces to expel these 2 brothers from this underground cave dwelling. The 10 great sects were the true privileged class of the North Sea. Even if Zhenling and Xianling sect fought to the death for the position of overlord of the North Sea, and the other 8 great sects also had their own ulterior motives, the privileges of the 10 great sects in the North Sea still couldn't be challenged by others. The fact that Siyu sect could participate in the exploration of the cave dwelling this time was already the 10 great sects giving them a way out. If they still didn't know what was good for them and tried in vain to eat more, then Lu Ping and the others would definitely first exclude these 2 people, and then rediscuss the distribution of the 6 spirit veins. Daoist Qian Shu had obviously seen through this, which was why he didn't dare to have the slightest intention of overstepping in front of the 10 great sections. He would first occupy a spirit vein in a well-behaved manner. In this way, with the strength of the 2 core forging Daoist masters of Yu Hai sect, they would instead play a very important role in balancing the disciples of Lu Ping and the other great sections. At that time, the role of Yu Hai sect would be manifested. Seeing that the Sea Tribulation sect knew when to stop, everyone didn't say anything more. Xiao Weijie said coldly, "Let's give up a spirit vein and divide it again. In this way, we won't hurt the harmony between us. Otherwise, aren't you afraid that Brother Lu will be stuffed after eating too much?" Lu Ping laughed and said, "I guess the 5 of you have only broken through the Water Shura's encirclement and arrived here. You didn't kill all of them, right?" Water Shura? Were they the cultivators who were extremely skilled in the invisibility technique? Are they called Azuras? What kind of organization is this? Lu Ping saw that Xiao Weijie's face was a little blank, and knew that he didn't know anything about the Water Shura. Not only him, but Han Fei and the others next to him also looked confused. Only Daoist Shui Xiu seemed to be in deep thought, as if she knew something about the Water Shura. Lu Ping didn't explain, but just smiled and said, "When you return to the sect, you can ask your masters about the Water Shura. But are you sure that those Azuras won't follow you here after being repelled?" Xiao Weijie and the others were startled, and then their expressions changed greatly. Qiao Weijie instantly propped up his protective aura, and at the same time, he turned his hand and slashed out a 3-meter-long flaming saber. It seemed that the entire palace would tremble with the slash of the flaming saber. The flaming saber didn't hit anyone, but the burning flames swept to both sides. In a burst of ear-piercing screams, 2 water shuras in the core forging stage jumped far away, and then their figures quickly dimmed, as if they were about to disappear into the air again. Reverend Shui Xiu took a step back, and blocked the entrance of the cultivation room. Then, he raised both of his hands, and a puff of white mist pervaded the passageway in front of the cultivation room's entrance. Some of the mist even covered the ground with a layer of white dust. Taoist Shui Xiu carefully examined the movement in the white mist, and suddenly pointed to the left and said, 10 feet. Taoist Han Fei, who was next to him, clenched his fist and lightly punched. There was a turbulence in the white mist, and suddenly there was a scream of pain from 10 feet away. Taoist Han Fei immediately punched a second time, but there was only the turbulence in the white mist. Obviously, the Azura was no longer there. Taoist Shui Xiu pointed to the dome of the palace above and said, 7 feet. Without saying anything, Taoist Qian Shu suddenly extended 3 tree vines from a branch in his hand, and curled them towards the place 7 feet away. The 3 tree vines shook violently, and there was an ear-piercing screech. Taoist Qian Shu said happily, got it. Taoist Yang Sanyang, who was next to him, was injured, but his muscles and bones weren't hurt. He smiled ferociously, and looked in the direction that Taoist Qian Shu's tree vines had dragged him over, and slashed with the jade ruler in his hand. The 3 tree vines that were curled together suddenly unraveled, and a puff of clear water scattered everywhere. Obviously, the captured water shura had been cut into 2 by Taoist Yang Sanyang's jade ruler. However, before Taoist Yang Sanyang could enjoy the pleasure of killing the enemy, he heard Lu Ping say from behind, be careful. Taoist Yang Sanyang's heart skipped a beat, and he heard Taoist Shui Xiu say urgently, be careful, Taoist Yang. Taoist Yang Sanyang knew something was wrong, and quickly retreated. At the same time, his body burned with 3 different colored flames. Taoist Qian Shu, who was next to him, had yet to retract the tree vines in his hand, and Taoist Qiao Weijie, who was on the other side, was chasing a water shura that he had set his eyes on earlier, and didn't even look at him. Taoist Yang Sanyang was filled with hatred, and the 3-colored flame shield was instantly extinguished by half. A human silhouette appeared, and its 4-foot-long body was holding a magic treasure short sword that flickered with a gloomy light. It stabbed towards Taoist Yang Sanyang's heart. At this moment, Taoist Yang Sanyang had no time to summon a defensive magic treasure, and could only do his best to move his body sideways, hoping that the sword would not stab into his core space. Just as Taoist Yang Sanyang was about to resign himself to his fate, he heard a pu sound in front of him. It was very different from the sound of a sharp blade entering a body that Taoist Yang Sanyang usually heard. When Taoist Yang Sanyang looked over, he saw a small wave surging out of thin air in front of his chest. The water shura's sharp blades stabbed into it, but it was firmly blocked and could not go any further. Although Taoist Yang Sanyang was a playboy, he was even more ruthless. Seeing that he had escaped death, he smashed the water shura's head with the jade ruler in front of him into a rotten watermelon with juice splattering everywhere. Taoist Yang Sanyang thought that it was Taoist Shui Xiu who had helped him, and turned to look to thank her. However, he saw Taoist Shui Xiu looking at the top of his head in surprise. When Taoist Yang Sanyang looked up, he saw a small black flag fall into Lu Ping's hands. Taoist Yang Sanyang said in a muffled voice, thanks, and ignored Lu Ping. Lu Ping did not mind. On the other side, a water shura that was seriously injured by Qiao Weijie was about to escape when a muffled sound was heard. It was Taoist Han Fei who was suddenly attacked by 2 water shura. Taoist Shui Xiu had only noticed one spot, and Taoist Han Fei was caught off guard by a water shura's kick that broke his protective upstanding chi. He felt a tightness in his chest and a sweet taste in his throat. He was already injured. Daoist Han Fei tried his best to resist the two water shuras, but he was in dire straits and was surrounded by danger. Qiao Weijie looked at Han Fei, who was not far away, and shot out 3 flaming blades in a row, but none of them were used to help Han Fei out. The 3 flaming blades formed a triangular shape and killed the severely injured water shura. When he turned around to help Han Fei, he saw that Daoist Shui Xiu had already helped Han Fei out of the siege of the 2 water shuras. When Qiao Weijie saw that Han Fei was fine, he turned around to look at the water shura that he had killed. The water shura's body had turned into a pool of clear water and seeped into the ground, leaving behind a glowing luminous pearl on the ground. It was obviously not an ordinary item. Qiao Weijie was delighted and wanted to pick up the pearl on the ground, but he did not notice that Daoist Han Fei, who had temporarily repelled the attack of the water shura with the help of Daoist Shui Xiu, was looking at Qiao Weijie's back with a hint of dissatisfaction. However, just as Qiao Weijie was about to pick up the pearl on the ground left behind by the water shura, the ground where the pearl was located suddenly cracked open. The pearl rolled into the crack, and then the crack on the ground closed again as Qiao Weijie roared angrily. Lu Ping, who was standing in the middle of his cultivation, could not help but smile when he saw Daoist Qiao Weijie angrily smashing 3 large pits on the ground. At this moment, Daoist Shui Xiu seemed to have thought of something and said anxiously, "Oh no, these water shura probably came out from the small pool in front of the palace. If that's the case, we can't stay here any longer. There are more and more opponents on our side. We should first divide the 4 spiritual veins that have not been engraved with the traction formation. Otherwise, when more water shura come, we will only die here, and then we won't even get this little benefit." How could Qiao Weijie agree? He was about to refuse, but he saw that Daoist Han Fei had already placed a traction formation plate on one of the spiritual veins and engraved a traction formation leading to the Flying Feather sect. After Daoist Han Fei finished engraving, he took over Daoist Shui Xiu's place to resist the water shura's attack. Daoist Shui Xiu glanced at Lu Ping, who was helping the others to resist the water shura from time to time. She saw Lu Ping turn his head and smile at her. Daoist Shui Xiu also chose a spiritual vein to place the traction formation and formation plate, but she knew in her heart that she was no match for this Jinling disciple from the beginning to the end. This time, Jinling had the upper hand again. The traction formation for the Siyu sect's spiritual veins was engraved by Daoist Yang Sanyang. Qiao Weijie originally wanted to take advantage of Xianling sect's status to share a portion of Lu Ping's spiritual veins equally, but in the end, no one had the time to support him. He had no choice but to reluctantly engrave the traction formation on the last remaining spiritual vein. However, he already had the urge to curse in his heart. Because of the previous people's selection, when it came to Qiao Weijie, the last remaining spiritual vein was dry and astringent. After Xianling sect drew it back, they would have to spend a large amount of money to nourish it before it could be used. Otherwise, this spiritual vein might be wasted or reduced to a mini-spiritual vein. Qiao Weijie was just about to open his mouth to question when he saw Lu Ping and the others suddenly break out of the palace in unison. If Qiao Weijie delayed any longer, he might be abandoned by the others and would have to face the water shura's siege alone. Qiao Weijie's face alternated between red and light. He was so angry that he gritted his teeth, but he didn't dare to slow down at all. After he finished engraving the traction formation, he hurriedly placed the formation plate and rushed towards the others. On the surface of the sea, the people who had finally broken out of the water shura's siege released a sound-transmitting magic sword to their respective sets, and immediately went their separate ways. Lu Ping also released 2 sound-transmitting magic swords to Jinling. One was directed to Shuelan Palace on Huanyu Island, which was the closest to this place, and the other was directed in the direction of Huangli Island. However, after everyone had left, Lu Ping made a big circle on the surface of the sea. After confirming that no one was following him, he once again snuck back into Laozu's cave abode in the clear stream. Chapter 436. After leaving the cave dwelling with Qiao Weijie and the others, Lu Ping also brought Seng Wu out with him. He instructed Seng Wu to return to Huanyu Island first, then use the teleportation formation there to meet up with his companions on Huangli Island. After that, Lu Ping returned to the underground cave dwelling alone. This is the water-repelling moon pearl. Lu Ping watched as De Bao limped out from the ground. He then handed the spirit pearl that he snatched from Qiao Weijie's subordinates to Lu Ping. When De Bao snatched this spirit pearl, although he escaped quickly, he was still snatching food from the hands of a core forging cultivator. Qiao Weijie's angry attack still injured De Bao. Lu Ping didn't expect this pearl to be a famous treasure in the ocean, the water-repelling moon pearl. The water-repelling moon pearl was also a natural treasure. Strictly speaking, it was also a kind of natural treasure. However, no cultivator was willing to use this natural treasure to refine their protective aura or condense various divine abilities. This was because it was simply a waste of a natural treasure. The water-repelling moon pearl itself had a simple effect that all cultivators coveted, and that was water-repelling. For cultivators, water-repelling was a very simple spell. However, for hundreds of meters of sea water, it required the full effort of a blood condensation cultivator. For more than 100 meters of sea water, only a core forging cultivator might be able to use the water-repelling spell. Once the sea depth exceeded 1,000 meters, then it would require a Dharma manifestation cultivator to survive. Of course, some magic treasures with water-repelling effects could greatly increase the effect of a cultivator's diving ability. However, after a certain depth, the huge water pressure would weaken the effect of these magic treasures or even render them ineffective. However, all of this was not possible with the water-repelling moon pearl. It could be said that a cultivator with the water-repelling moon pearl could dive to any depth of the sea without worrying about the huge water pressure crushing the cultivator into a meat patty. Of course, there were often fierce underwater beasts and demon cultivators hidden deep in the sea. However, it depended on the cultivator's ability to avoid them. The water-repelling moon pearl did not have a way to hide from deep-sea beasts and demon cultivators. The boundless ocean was a boundless treasure trove. Even the sea monsters who lived in the ocean all year round didn't dare to say they understood the ocean well. There were countless dangerous places in the deep sea that even the sea monsters would hesitate to venture into. There might be rich cultivation resources hidden in those places, but as long as Lu Ping had the water-repelling moon pearl, he would be qualified to enter any dangerous place in the deep sea. Although the water-repelling moon pearl only had the effect of repelling water, this alone was better than the other treasures. At least, it paved the way for Lu Ping to enter the dangerous underwater areas and search for treasures. Of course, the most important thing was that a cultivator had to have the strength to survive in the dangerous areas. For some reason, after Lu Ping returned to the clear stream, water Shura did not appear again. Lu Ping's divine sense was constantly conducting the most detailed search in the surroundings. His eyes were also flickering with green light, but he did not find any trace of water Shura. At this moment, the ground of the cave suddenly began to tremble. Lu Ping walked towards the central palace and saw that the spiritual energy in the cultivation room was rapidly decreasing. The traction formation engraved on a small spiritual vein shone brightly, and the traction formation plate placed in the center of the traction formation suddenly exploded. As the ground shook, the spiritual vein of Xian Ling sect was moved away. After the first time, the second time came immediately. Amidst the rumbling of the ground, the spiritual vein occupied by Haiyu sect was also moved away. After that, it was the turn of the two spiritual veins of Jinling. It was not good for Lu Ping to keep them all to himself, so one was led to Huangli Island by Hu Lili, while the other was taken by Tian Shui Laozu of Snow Mist Palace. Although the one who put in the effort for this trip to the Clear Stream Cave was Lu Ping, if it were not for the checks and balances between the various sects on Huanyu Island and Laozu, it would not be just the 6 of them who came to the cave to explore. When the Flying Feather sect, which was the furthest away from here, also moved a spiritual vein, Lu Ping chuckled and took out a stone that was about a foot long from his storage ring. It was the stone tablet that had the words, Clear Stream Cave, carved on it. In fact, when Lu Ping first entered the central palace of the Clear Stream Cave, he had a very strange feeling. He had entered and exited his teacher's Chonghua Palace several times, especially after Lu Tianling achieved Dharma idol Laozu. The palace of Chonghua Palace seemed to have been refined into a spatial artifact by Lu Tianling and Laozu. Although it was still placed on the small island in the middle of Tianling Mountain, every time Lu Ping entered it, he would arrive at the top of Tianling Mountain's main peak. This time, after Lu Ping entered the central palace, Lu Ping had a vague feeling in his heart, especially when he used his qi as a signal in the training room to summon Debao, who was underground. However, Debao did not notice, which further proved Lu Ping's guess. Since this central palace was very likely a spatial artifact refined by Laozu, then there must be a mansion-guarding stone tablet in this palace, and this mansion-guarding stone tablet was the one that Lu Ping found on the praying mat in the training room. After exiting the palace, Lu Ping took out the mansion-guarding stone tablet that he had refined. After another earthquake, the huge central palace had shrunk to the size of the House of Gold, and it flew towards Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping thought for a moment, and simply put the central palace into the House of Gold. Compared to a large spatial artifact like the House of Gold, the central palace was just a toy. Lu Ping directly landed the palace on the top of a small mountain in the middle of the House of Gold, which saved Lu Ping the trouble of building another palace on top of it. However, just as Lu Ping put away the central palace, the entire cave dwelling suddenly shook violently. The rumbling sounds grew louder and louder. The remaining seals in the underground cave dwelling began to crumble, and the protective array formation around the cave dwelling also began to crumble. Lu Ping thought to himself, "Oh no! This palace should be the main hub of the protective formation of the entire cave." After Lu Ping put it away, all the formations and restrictions in the cave collapsed. At that moment, the seawater must have flowed into the cave, and the place was about to be flooded by seawater. Although Lu Ping felt it was a pity that this underground cave was destroyed, it was obvious that Laozu had spent a lot of effort to build this cave. However, the collapse of the cave would not cause any danger to him at all. Not to mention, he had the water prevention pearl in his hand. Even without the pearl, this place was only about 100 feet away from the sea. For a cultivator like Lu Ping who practiced water attribute cultivation, it was not dangerous at all. However, after thinking about it, Lu Ping put Debao away and released Samling. Then, he took Samling and jumped into the small pool in front of the palace. As soon as Lu Ping jumped into the pool, the water churned violently, and then calmed down. A huge amount of seawater suddenly poured in from the underground tunnel, and the underground cave began to accumulate water. The water level was getting higher and higher, and in less than half an hour, the entire cave was submerged by seawater. As soon as Lu Ping jumped into the small pool, he was attacked by two water Asuras. However, they were only Asuras at the peak of the blood condensation realm. Without Lu Ping having to do anything, the two Asuras were killed by the angry Samling. The water Shura was a ghost in the water, but the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake was also an overlord in the water. Although the water Shura's strange invisibility ability became more powerful in the water, the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake's strength in the water was also a level higher, not to mention that the three spirits were at the core forging stage. However, after killing the two water Asuras, Lu Ping and the others did not encounter any more sneak attacks from the water Asuras. Lu Ping's eyes flashed with a green light as he constantly looked around. He also concentrated his divine telekinesis within a radius of more than 100 feet around him, carefully identifying the movement of the water. However, he still did not find any trace of the water Asuras. Could it be that the water Asuras retreated on their own after Lu Ping and the others discovered this place and were unable to kill them? The more Lu Ping thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Ever since the existence of the Ice Asuras was discovered on Frost Island, Lu Ping vaguely heard that some of the late core forging realm cultivators from his sect often went out in secret. When they returned, the disciples of the sect found that they carried a murderous aura all over their bodies. Some of the late core forging realm cultivators were inexplicably injured. When the disciples tried to ask about it, they were all sternly stopped by these late core forging realm cultivators. Not only Zhenling sect, but it seemed that the 10 great sects of the North Sea, as well as some large sects and clans like the Haiyu sect, all had rumors of late core forging realm cultivators going out on secret missions. In the beginning, all the cultivators guessed that the North Sea cultivators were targeting the demon race, but there was no news from the demon race. Logically speaking, such a large-scale raid by late core forging realm cultivators on the demon race would definitely be earth-shattering. However, both the human and demon races kept their mouths shut, causing other cultivators to be puzzled. Could it be that these cultivators went out to search for the traces of the Asuras? Thinking of the information he received about the Asuras from his teacher, Lu Ping had a faint guess in his heart. This was probably the reason why the water Asuras had retreated. Once Lu Ping and the others retreated and sent the news back to the sect, perhaps there would be late core forging realm cultivators coming to investigate. If the water Asuras did not retreat, they would be greeted with a disaster. Lu Ping continued to dive for dozens of feet, but still did not reach the bottom of the small pool. The pressure in the water was increasing. Although it was not far from Lu Ping's limit, Lu Ping had the Aqua Moon Pearl in hand, so he naturally would not waste his true essence to resist the heavy pressure of the sea. The Aqua Moon Pearl quietly hung above Lu Ping's head. The soft light like moonlight formed a colorful shield around Lu Ping's body. Following Lu Ping's thoughts, he continued to dive to the bottom of the sea. After diving for nearly 2,000 feet, Lu Ping was now more than 3,000 feet away from the surface of the sea. Finally, he saw the bottom of the small pool. At the narrow and rugged bottom, there was a pitch-black hole that was obviously newly opened. He did not know where it led to. This must be the reason why the water Asuras were able to sneak into the clear stream cave abode. At this time, Lu Ping did not pay attention to the pitch-black hole. Instead, he focused on the other side of the bottom, on a slightly flatter ground that was filled with countless silt. There were obviously a few stone pillars here that were man-made, although it was difficult to see them because of the silt. With a wave of his hand, Lu Ping pushed away the 5 feet thick silt. A small long-distance teleportation array with a radius of 3 feet appeared in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping sucked in a breath of cold air, his face filled with surprise and anticipation. Chapter 437. The transmitting formation was small because it could only transport one cultivator at a time. The transmitting formation was a long-distance one because its destination was the cultivation world of the central region, which Lu Ping had been longing for a long time. Lu Ping cleaned up the transmitting formation completely. He found that although it had been there for thousands of years, the transmitting formation was still in good condition. Judging from the traces of the transmitting formation's construction, it was obviously the work of Qingjian Laozu. And Qingjian Laozu was actually a cultivator from the central region. Lu Ping suppressed his ecstasy and carefully examined the transmitting formation to see if it could still be used. The result was obviously to Lu Ping's satisfaction, but it also made his heart ache. There were a total of 13 grooves on the ground of the transmitting formation that needed to be inlaid with spirit stones. In addition to the surrounding 12 grooves, which needed 12 top-grade spirit stones, the most central groove needed a top-grade spirit stone. In other words, when Lu Ping went to the central region alone, he would need a top-grade spirit stone and 12 top-grade spirit stones, not to mention the return trip. A top-grade spirit stone was something that could only be used by Dharma Laozu. Lu Ping now had a top-grade spirit stone in his possession, which was enough for him to go to the central region once. But Lu Ping did not know when he would get a second top-grade spirit stone. Although the central region was known as the Holy Land of the cultivation world, top-grade spirit stones were not common among core forging cultivators. Although Lu Ping was filled with yearning for the cultivation world in the Central Plains, he couldn't just leave before he was fully prepared. Thinking of this, Lu Ping went to another direction at the bottom of the small pool. Samling had entered the cave that the water Shura had opened up while Lu Ping was cleaning up the transmitting formation. At this moment, with Samling's speed, he would have swum dozens of miles away if he had not been attacked by the water Shura. Just as Lu Ping arrived at the entrance of the cave, Lu Linger had already returned from the entrance and said something to Lu Ping. Lu Ping was quite surprised. He immediately returned to the transmitting formation and covered it up with the mud at the bottom of the pool. Even the conspicuous stone pillars were disguised by Lu Ping. According to Lu Linger's explanation, it seemed that there was a lair of the water Shura at the other end of the tunnel, but it was currently being surrounded. Lu Ping suddenly understood. No wonder all the water Shura in the underground cave suddenly retreated. Previously, when Lu Ping entered the small pool, he was only attacked by 2 water Shura at the peak of the blood condensation realm. It turned out that they were not afraid of being surrounded by human cultivators again, but because their lair was being attacked. Lu Ping thought for a moment, then took out a set of armor from his storage ring. It was actually a simple set of armor made of stone. He put it on and put Lu Linger into the House of Gold. This set of stone armor was made from 2 mysterious stone slabs that Lu Ping had taken down from the entrance of the Land of 100 Flowers in the perished Mystery Land. These 2 stone slabs had the magical effect of blocking cultivators' divine sense. Lu Ping once wanted to give them to Chen Lian to forge a set of magic tools that could block cultivators' divine sense. Unfortunately, Chen Lian did not know what these 2 stone slabs were, so he could not forge them. In the end, he could only make a simple set of stone armor out of one of the 2 large stone slabs, which Lu Ping used to wear. The other piece was still in Chen Lian's hands. He wanted to see if he could find another way to forge it into a magic tool. The pitch-black underwater cave led to dozens of miles away. It took Lu Ping a lot of effort to walk out of the tunnel. The faint rumbling of spells coming from the seawater made Lu Ping feel that the encirclement of the water Shura was coming to an end. Lu Qing and Lu Hai, who were waiting at the entrance of the cave, briefly explained the situation to Lu Ping. Lu Ping also put them into the House of Gold. Then, following the complicated underwater terrain, he quietly sneaked in the direction of the battle. When Lu Ping sneaked near the battlefield, the battle was already over. Only 2 figures were left. When Lu Ping looked at them, his heart was pounding. Lu Ping knew one of them, while the other looked to be in his 30s. Although Lu Ping did not know the other cultivator, what he said scared Lu Ping. The cultivator said casually, "Brother-in-law, how is my nephew?" The other person was none other than the Jinling immortal, Li Xianin. He said coldly, "Chu, is fine. You don't have to worry about this." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Yin Zichu was actually the son of Li Xianin. Why did no one in the sect know that? Why was Yin Zichu's surname Yin and not Li? Lu Ping knew that he might have accidentally uncovered some secret of his sect's senior. The friar seemed to have expected Li Xuanin's reaction. He just smiled and said, "I think the human race has already discovered the appearance of the water Shura. Brother-in-law, I'm afraid you came here to purposely exterminate the water Shura tribe, right?" The friar seemed to know that Li Xianin couldn't be bothered to answer such questions. He just said to himself, "I didn't expect to meet you here. Speaking of which, you and I haven't seen each other for 50 years since my sister passed away." Although Li Xianin didn't say anything, Lu Ping still saw a flash of sadness in Li Xuanin's eyes when the cultivator mentioned, "My sister passed away. If there's nothing else, I need to return to the sect." Li Xianin obviously didn't want to say anything more to the cultivator in front of him. The water under his feet surged, and his body slowly floated to the surface of the sea. "Wait!" The cultivator shouted and said, "Li Xianin, do you still remember my sister's death?" Li Xianin, who was about to leave, stopped abruptly in the sea. He said to the cultivator coldly, "The death of my wife is absolutely irreconcilable." "Fine." The cultivator laughed coldly. "Why do you think I'm here?" Li Xuanin's eyes narrowed, and he said coldly, "You came specially to find me?" The cultivator nodded and said, "Although it's really difficult to find your whereabouts and my previous guesses failed several times, I finally guessed it this time." "Speak." Li Xianin said coldly. The cultivator seemed to know what Taoist Li Xianin meant. He nodded and his lips moved as if he was saying something. Daoist Li Xianyin just stood there with a bleak expression. After the cultivator finished speaking, Daoist Li Xianyin raised his head and nodded. The cultivator seemed to be very happy and said, although it's dangerous this time, if we plan it properly, we might have a chance to kill him. Besides, in terms of stealth and assassination, how many people in the North Sea can compare to brother-in-law? Li Xianyin didn't comment. Li Xianyin smiled bitterly. I really don't know why my sister fell for a boring weirdo like you. Seeing that the cultivator had finished speaking, Li Xianyin directly said, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving. After saying that, he ignored the cultivator and went straight to the surface of the sea. After Reverend Li Xianyin left, the cultivator continued to stand there. It was unknown what he was thinking. After a while, the cultivator released a long sigh and shook his head. He mumbled something to himself and his figure flashed across the ocean before disappearing into the ocean. In the distance, under a small trench, Lu Ping, clad in his stone armor, hid in the seaweed and remained motionless. After a while, Lu Ping's pupils abruptly shrank. The figure that had just disappeared suddenly reappeared in the same spot. The cultivator looked around to make sure he wasn't discovered. Then, he came to a valley in an underwater mountain range and cleared out a small teleportation array in a corner of the seaweed. The cultivator inserted a few spirit stones into the teleportation formation plate, and the teleportation formation flashed with light. The cultivator then disappeared from the teleportation formation. The seaweed that the cultivator had stirred up from the bottom of the sea fell back down, once again covering up the small teleportation formation. Lu Ping stood up from the seaweed and looked at the battlefield that had been turned into a mess by the annihilation of the water Shura. He then cleaned out the small teleportation formation that the cultivator had used previously. After a careful look, he found that the teleportation formation's furthest distance was only 5,000 miles, but he didn't know where it would be teleported to. Why would this person build a teleportation formation here? If this teleportation formation had existed before the establishment of the water Shura's lair that had just been annihilated, then it would be fine. However, if this teleportation formation was built after the establishment of the water Shura's lair, then this matter was worth discussing. Lu Ping thought about it. He didn't know if he should inform Immortal Li Xianyin about this teleportation formation, so he simply ignored him. Lu Ping returned from the cave to the small pool in the cave mansion and then tried to perform the art of changing seas and mulberry fields. Although it was far from the level of changing seas and mulberry fields, it was enough to collapse the passage that connected to the outside. Lu Ping returned to the hall in the belly of the mountain. At this moment, including the underground cave mansion, the entire dojo that Qingjian Laozu had opened had been submerged in the seawater. Lu Ping closed the passage on the ground of the hall in the belly of the mountain and then came out from the cave entrance in the middle of the underwater mountain range. After covering up the cave entrance again, he broke through the sea surface and flew towards Huanyu Island. Upon reaching the Snow Mist Palace, Lu Ping went to pay a visit to Tian Shui Laozu and told her about his experience in the cave mansion. Then, he passed Qingjian Laozu's inheritance and the formula for the vitality due to Tian Shui Laozu. Tian Shui Laozu said happily, not bad. This Qingjian Laozu was a rather famous figure in the North Sea back then. It's just that his temperament was similar to Tianlin's, he was also like a wild crane that lived a leisurely life. It's not bad that he didn't want to leave behind an inheritance. A middle-stage Dharma cultivation technique in our sect is only one grade lower than the 5 true inheritances. And this vitality dew, although we have the formula for the 5 years longevity pill, this vitality dew is also a formula for the longevity pill that our sect has never collected before. This time, junior brother Tian Kong has more confidence. From Tian Shui Laozu's words of more confidence, Lu Ping could tell that senior uncle Tian Kang's injuries weren't as it seemed on the surface. However, Lu Ping didn't know what was going on and could only ponder about it in private. Just as Lu Ping was about to bid farewell, Tian Shui Laozu said, "You should return to Tianling Mountain first. The people from the 5 great sects of the East Sea have already arrived at our sect to discuss the matter of the overseas cultivators joining forces to fight against the demon race. The 5 great sects of the East Sea are truly great sects that can be compared to the great sects of the Middle Earth. They aren't something that our North Sea's 10 great sects can compare to. This time, some of the elite disciples from the 5 great sects are here to spar with our sect's core forging realm cultivators who are below 100 years old. It's said that Xianling sect only won 3 out of 10 matches. You'll be there to hold the line. If our sect can win 4 matches, then it'll be fine. Chapter 438. As soon as Lu Ping emerged from the Heaven's Spirit Hall's teleportation formation, he heard a deafening tiger roar. A loud laugh could be heard. Sire's cultivation is indeed profound. We'll consider this battle a draw, so why don't we call it a draw? Ha, Sire's cultivation is admirable. Today's battle was truly satisfying. If we continued, then both of us would be heavily injured. Calling it a draw is exactly what I wanted. Lu Ping was stunned. It seemed that he had arrived too late. The disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea and the disciples of Jinling had probably already begun. However, the person who spoke first made Lu Ping feel rather surprised. From the voice, it was clear that Yao Yong had just fought with someone. However, with Yao Yong's personality, he would either win or lose in a battle. There would always be a result. For him to call it a draw like today was truly inconceivable to Lu Ping. Lu Ping's interest was piqued. He walked towards the direction of the voice, wanting to see just who it was that could make Yao Yong feel a sense of familiarity. However, before Lu Ping had even arrived, Yao Yong's roar could be heard. Perfect, I have a few jars of fine wine in my dwelling. Sire, you've come from afar, why don't we drink to our heart's content and see who's better at drinking? How delightful. I didn't think that I would meet such a straightforward person like Sire today, haha. Before Lu Ping had even arrived at the plaza of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, 2 streaks of red light had already streaked across the sky. Clearly, the 2 people who had just battled had already left. At that moment, a person came walking over. Seeing Lu Ping, he was stunned for a moment before revealing a smile. Lu Ping asked first, Junior Zhang, are the disciples of our sect currently sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea? Why are you leaving? Zhang Zicheng smiled, so it's Senior Lu who has returned. Senior Lu has come at just the right time. Our early core forging disciples have just finished sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea. Now it's time for the mid-core forging disciples to fight. With Senior Lu here, we should be able to win the first battle. Oh, they've already finished 5 battles. Who won? The disciples of the East Sea and the North Sea had a total of 10 matches. 5 matches were at the early stage of the core forging realm, and the other 5 matches were at the mid-stage. Zhang Zicheng said with both excitement and regret, 2 wins and 2 losses. Just now, senior brother Yao Yong shook hands with a disciple of Sky-Splitting Sword sect and made up with him. Now, both of them are having a drinking competition. This result is better than Xianling sect's. I heard that Xianling sect only won 2 out of the 5 early core forging matches, and only won 1 round against Ouyang Weijian in the mid-core forging matches. Now that senior martial brother Lu is here, I'm sure Xianling sect will be able to win another round in the mid-core forging matches. With this, Xianling sect is already half a round ahead of Xianling sect. Lu Ping smiled and said, the disciples of the East Sea sects are all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. How can I say that I will definitely win? Zhang Zicheng did not refute. Instead, he said, senior brother, junior brother was confident in that match. However, senior brother said that the disciples of the Eastern Sea sects are all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Senior brother did not believe it before, but now I have no choice but to believe it. Oh. This piqued Lu Ping's interest. Although his understanding of the Eastern Sea was far greater than his peers, Zhang Zicheng often worked under Heaven's Spirit Hall's Enlightened Master Profound Miao and Enlightened Master Guoxianshan. Presumably, Lu Ping would be able to obtain a lot of information from them. So, He asked, "Junior Marshal Brother, did you hear anything?" Zhang Zicheng said, "This time, although the disciples sent by the Eastern Seas sects are all elites, according to Marshal Uncle Guoxian Shan, these disciples are not the best of the best. Whether it is Senior Marshal Brother Ji, Senior Marshal Brother Yin, or Senior Marshal Brother Yao Yong, they can be said to be the best of the early core forging disciples." Lu Ping nodded. What Zhang Zicheng said was true. The Eastern Seas sects were indeed stronger than the Northern Seas sections. So, he asked again, did Junior Marshal Brother Xian and Junior Marshal Brother Xian Chu also compete with the Eastern Seas disciples? Zhang Zicheng smiled and said, "Yes, if it weren't for the two of them, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been easy for us to win." These two Senior Marshal brothers won one match each. Senior Marshal Brother Yao drew one, and lost the remaining two matches. Zhang Zicheng looked at Lu Ping and said, "In one match, Yuan Zhan went up. This person's cultivation has already reached the third layer of core forging. He exchanged several dozen moves with a purple talisman pavilion disciple, but in the end, he was defeated." Lu Ping nodded and didn't say anything. Zhang Zicheng saw that Lu Ping's expression didn't change because of his mention of Yuan Zhan, so he thought for a moment and said, "Originally, Senior Marshal Brother Du Feng wanted to go up, but Yuan Zhan took the initiative. Marshal Uncle Xian Shu also selected his general. If Senior Marshal Brother Du had gone up, maybe we could have won another match." Lu Ping understood what Zhang Zicheng meant, so he smiled and said, "It's good to hide a bit. The 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are stronger than us. If we make their disciples suffer, it'll be a bad thing for our sect. After all, the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are several times stronger than the 10 great sects of the Northern Sea." Zhang Zicheng nodded and thought about it. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Why isn't Junior Marshal Brother continuing to observe? Are you going to leave?" Zhang Zicheng smiled and said, "There's nothing for me to do now, but there's still the matter of the courtyard. Marshal Uncle Xian Yuan pushed all the matters of the courtyard to me, but now he's free and unfettered." Lu Ping patted Zhang Zicheng's shoulder. After the two said their goodbyes, Lu Ping continued to walk towards the square in front of the main hall. In the distance, he saw several core forging late-stage cultivators sitting in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Among them, Taoist Guoxian Shan was chatting with a cultivator with an arrogant expression. Lu Ping recognized this person's robe. He was from the Eastern Seas Crystal Palace. Next to them were 2 core forging late-stage cultivators from Jinling and 4 other core forging late-stage cultivators from the other 4 sects of the Eastern Sea. From time to time, their eyes would glance at the 2 cultivators sparring in the middle of the square. One of the 2 cultivators from Jinling was Taoist Liang Xianfeng, while the other one Lu Ping didn't know. Presumably, he was Taoist Xian Shu who schemed against Huangli Island. Among these people, there was also a person Lu Ping was familiar with. It was Taoist Qin from the Northern Alliance when Jinling participated in the Northern Alliance's pill gathering in the Eastern Sea. Seeing that Taoist Qin was there, Lu Ping subconsciously didn't want him to find out that he was from the Northern Sea or even Jinling's disciple, so he quietly stood in an inconspicuous corner and watched the 2 sides fight. At this time, the Eastern Sea cultivator fighting was a disciple from Wind and Thunder Island, while the one fighting Jinling was Lu Ping's acquaintance, Taoist Xianlei. Taoist Xianlei learned a powerful thunder attribute magic art. Wind and Thunder Island was famous for their wind attribute and thunder attribute cultivation methods in the Eastern Sea. Naturally, it was a fierce battle when the two met. However, in the end, the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island had the upper hand. Taoist Xuanlei's spiritual essence was not as strong as that of the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island, so Taoist Xianlei was defeated in the end. From the side, Lu Ping could clearly see that enlightened Master Xianlei's fighting experience wasn't any less than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivators. In fact, he was even braver than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Both of them cultivated lightning elemental spells, and they had been competing against each other with many basic spells. The lightning elemental spells they cast were the same, but the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator had a slight advantage in these spells. More often than not, his spells were stronger than enlightened Master Xianlei's. In addition to the fact that the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island had a stronger foundation than Taoist Xianlei, the most likely reason for this phenomenon was that when Taoist Xianlei advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm, he smelted far less spirit items than the cultivator from Wind and Thunder Island. Lu Ping had a lot of contact with Taoist Xianlei on Frost Island. He knew that when Taoist Xianlei advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm, his accumulation was enough for him to smelt low-grade Earth-step Thunder attribute spirit items. However, Thunder attribute spirit items were rare, so Taoist Xianlei couldn't advance to the mid-stage core forging realm for a long time. In the end, Taoist Xianlei had no choice but to smelt 2 high-grade mystic spirit items. Although it was much stronger than the cultivator who smelted 1 spirit item, it was still not comparable to smelting low-grade Earth-step spirit items. This had always been a regret in Taoist Xuanlei's heart. Now, this regret finally had the opposite effect. The Northern Sea was barren. Taoist Xianlei wasn't inferior to the disciples of the Eastern Sea in all aspects. However, ordinary elite disciples of Wind and Thunder Island could smelt low-grade Earth-step spirit items when they advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm. As the most elite disciple of Jinling, Taoist Xianlei couldn't obtain a low-grade Earth-step spirit item. In Jinling, a cultivator who smelted a high-grade mystic spirit item when he advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm could become an elite cultivator and have the possibility of becoming a Dharma adept in the future, although the possibility was extremely small. In the Eastern Sea, the requirement was to reach the low-grade Earth-step spirit item. Only then could a cultivator be recognized by the sect and be nurtured as a Dharma adept. The scarcity of spirit items in the Northern Sea was evident. This was also why the Northern Sea cultivators could win more in the early-stage core forging realm. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm and smelted spirit items, the gap between the Northern Sea and Eastern Sea cultivators widened. The most obvious example was when Xianling sect's early-stage core forging realm cultivators could win 2 matches against Eastern Sea cultivators of the same level. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm, they could only rely on Xianling sect's number 1 genius, Ouyang Weijian, to win 1 match. The second person to fight was Taoist Xuanqing of Jinling. The Eastern Sea sent out a disciple from the Northern Alliance. Unfortunately, Taoist Xuanqing's strength was not as strong as Taoist Xuanlei's, but this Northern Alliance disciple was stronger than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Taoist Xuanqing was defeated in a hurry. The third person to fight was Jinling's disciple. Lu Ping didn't know him, but he heard his name was Xian Shao. He was at core forging realm level 5, but unfortunately, he was still defeated by a disciple from the Violet Talisman Pavilion. In the mid-stage core forging realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. At this time, the surrounding cultivators of Jinling started whispering to each other. The competition between Jinling and Xianling's sect had been getting more and more intense in recent years. The 2 sects would compete in everything. In the previous few battles between the 2 sects, Jinling always had the upper hand. This time, Jinling only needed to win 1 more match to suppress Xianling's sect. However, in the mid-stage core forging realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. There were only 2 matches left, and the strongest disciple from the Crystal Palace had yet to fight. If all the mid-stage core forging realm cultivators were defeated, Jinling would become a laughing stock in front of Xianling's sect. Who's the next match? He won't lose again, right? I heard it's Reverend Xian Shang. He's ranked in the top 10 among the new talents of North Sea. He should be able to win 1 match. It's hard to say. Reverend Xianlei might not be much weaker than Reverend Xian Shang, and his opponent is Skyrend, known as the strongest sect in the ocean. Reverend Xian Shang will probably lose this match. As expected, the 5 great sects of East Sea are not something we can compare to. In North Sea, all of the cultivators from our sect who are fighting today are famous, but none of them can win against cultivators of the same level as them. North Sea can't compare to East Sea. No wonder some senior cultivators often say that our North Sea is barren. There's still 1 person from our sect who hasn't fought yet. That's right. Where's Reverend Lu Xianping, the water sword immortal? Back then, during the chaotic battle at Tianling Mountain, spiritual master Lu Xianping suppressed several cultivators of the same level from our sect. What kind of prestige was that? If he was here, he would definitely be able to defeat Dong Hai and not let that Ouyang Weijian dominate. I heard that Reverend Lu Xianping went to Universe Island with Fornax Laozu. He probably hasn't returned yet. He probably won't be able to make it to this grand event. It's a pity. Why did he have to come at this critical moment? Perhaps our sect has other considerations. Think about it, if all the cultivators in the middle stage of the core forging realm in our sect lose, we can still say that our strongest cultivator did not participate in the battle due to other matters. At that time, we can still save some face, but if Reverend Lu Xianping is here today, once he loses, it will mean that our sect can't compare to Xianling sect, and Lu Xianping can't compare to Ouyang Weijian. Forget it. Our sect has always been open and aboveboard. We're not afraid of being laughed at by others. If we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. Why would we use these dirty tricks? It'll just make others laugh at us. The Water Crystal Palace cultivator who was watching the battle with Reverend Guo Xianshan smiled at him and said, "Your sect's early core forging disciples are not bad. They can be considered as elites among the various sects of the Eastern Sea. However, these mid-core forging disciples are a level lower than Xianling sect's disciples. Although your sect's 3 disciples gave it their all, there were very few eye-catching performances. They can't even compare to Xianling sect's Ouyang Weijian. Ouyang Weijian can be regarded as an astonishing talent even among the large sects of the East Sea. His future is limitless. I've heard that your sect has always been on equal footing with Xianling sect in the North Sea. If he reaches the Dharma manifestation stage in the future, he'll be able to suppress your sect." The words of the cultivator from the Crystal Palace caused displeasure to appear on Reverend Liang Xianfeng and Reverend Xian Shu's faces. When the reverends of the other 4 sects of East Sea heard the words of the Reverend from the Crystal Palace, they did not say anything. They just smiled and watched the battle between the cultivators below, as if they had nothing to do with it. Reverend Guo Xianshan did not get angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "Xianling sect has been around for longer than me, Jinling. They've also been the #1 sect in the North Sea for 3,000 years. Their foundation is naturally not something that I, Jinling, can compare to. Even though they're going downhill now, Laozu is the one who holds up the sky. Even if I, Jinling, catch up to him, I can never compare to him." His tone was actually one of weakness. The cultivator from the Crystal Palace smiled and did not say anything else. Instead, he looked at the 4th battle in the field. The people who fought this battle caused Lu Ping's eyes to light up. East Sea had sent out Skyren's disciple, and Jinling had sent out Reverend Xian Shang. Lu Ping had fought against Reverend Xian Shang a few times before, so he knew that Reverend Xian Shang was stronger than Reverend Xian Lei, so he had a chance to win this battle. Just as he expected, Reverend Xian Shang swung his long spear like a dancing dragon and fought head-on against Skyren's disciple. The 2 of them fought fiercely, exchanging blows with each other, and the cheers from the crowd grew louder than the last. Skyren's sword technique required him to press forward with an indomitable will, using offense as defense, and Reverend Xian Shang was also a person who would rather break than bend. He was a person who loved fighting and fighting fiercely. The 2 of them could be said to be evenly matched in their battle, and their fight was also the most dangerous. In the end, both of them were injured, and the spectators were incredibly shocked. In the end, Skyren's disciple used Heaven-Splitting Sword, one of Skyren's 7 great sword techniques. Every single slash he delivered brought with it a presence that could split the world. Reverend Xian Shang's spear technique could clearly not compare to Skyren's disciple's sword technique, but Reverend Xian Shang had found an opening and decided to trade wounds for wounds, causing Skyren's disciple to hold back. He had a few chances to heavily injure Reverend Xian Shang, but because he would also be heavily injured, he had no choice but to stop midway. Skyren's disciple could not help but let out a cold snort as he watched the battle from the front of Heaven's Spirit Hall. He was very displeased with his sect's disciple, but he praised Reverend Xian Shang to the side. Skyren's disciple finally found an opening. His long sword turned into a long arc and stabbed towards Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. Reverend Xian Shang did not seem to expect that his opponent's flying sword would be so fast. When he saw that it was already too late for him to dodge, the cultivators watching the battle cried out in surprise. Skyren's disciple also seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The pressure from fighting against Jinling's disciple was simply too great. This person was basically a desperado. He would rather be cut by his opponent just to leave a mark on his opponent's body. However, at that moment, the gazes of the late-stage core forging cultivators from the various sects watching the battle in front of Heaven's Spirit Hall changed. However, their expressions were different. Jinling's disciple's lips curled up in delight, while Skyren's disciple snorted coldly. The other 4 sects of Eastern Sea shook their heads. At the same time, Lu Ping, who had been watching the battle from the side, also smiled faintly. Skyren's disciple had been careless. The opening on Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder was clearly a trap he had intentionally left behind. The long sword stabbed forward, but Reverend Xian Shang did not dodge. Instead, he leapt forward and pounced on the flying sword. Skyren's disciple could not stop in time, and the flying sword pierced through Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. However, Reverend Xian Shang seized the chance to move forward and point his long spear horizontally at Skyren's disciple. With one thrust, he pierced through Skyren's disciple's protective chi and pointed at the disciple's throat. In the blink of an eye, the situation had suddenly changed. Skyren's disciple was dumbfounded, and the Jinling cultivators who were watching the battle were silent for a moment before they suddenly let out deafening cheers. When Lu Ping saw that his sect's middle-stage core forging cultivator had already won a battle, Jinling could once again suppress Xianling's sect. He walked towards the relocation rune, intending to return to Huangli Island. He still had many things to do, and he did not want to stay in this place for too long. If it were not for Tian Shuelaozu's orders, Lu Ping would not have paid any attention to the sparring between the disciples of Eastern Sea. However, right when Lu Ping arrived in front of the relocation rune, a clear shout traveled into his ears. "I am Crystal Palace's Zhang Shiji. I have heard that your sect's water sword immortal, Reverend Lu Xuanping's sword technique is excellent. Would you be willing to teach me?" Chapter 439. As soon as Lu Ping emerged from the Heaven's Spirit Hall's teleportation formation, he heard a deafening tiger roar. A loud laugh could be heard. "Sire's cultivation is indeed profound. We'll consider this battle a draw, so why don't we call it a draw? Ha, Sire's cultivation is admirable. Today's battle was truly satisfying. If we continued, then both of us would be heavily injured. Calling it a draw is exactly what I wanted." Lu Ping was stunned. It seemed that he had arrived too late. The disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea and the disciples of Jinling had probably already begun. However, the person who spoke first made Lu Ping feel rather surprised. From the voice, it was clear that Yao Yong had just fought with someone. However, with Yao Yong's personality, he would either win or lose in a battle. There would always be a result. For him to call it a draw like today was truly inconceivable to Lu Ping. Lu Ping's interest was piqued. He walked towards the direction of the voice, wanting to see just who it was that could make Yao Yong feel a sense of familiarity. However, before Lu Ping had even arrived, Yao Yong's roar could be heard. "Perfect, I have a few jars of fine wine in my dwelling. Sire, you've come from afar. Why don't we drink to our heart's content and see who's better at drinking?" How delightful. I didn't think that I would meet such a straightforward person like Sire today, haha. Before Lu Ping had even arrived at the plaza of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, 2 streaks of red light had already streaked across the sky. Clearly, the 2 people who had just battled had already left. At that moment, a person came walking over. Seeing Lu Ping, he was stunned for a moment before revealing a smile. Lu Ping asked first, Junior Zhang, are the disciples of our sect currently sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea? Why are you leaving? Zhang Zicheng smiled, so it's Senior Lu who has returned. Senior Lu has come at just the right time. Our early core forging disciples have just finished sparring with the disciples of the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea. Now it's time for the mid-core forging disciples to fight. With Senior Lu here, we should be able to win the first battle. Oh, they've already finished 5 battles. What's the outcome? The disciples of the East Sea and the North Sea had a total of 10 matches. 5 matches were at the early stage of the core forging realm, and the other 5 matches were at the mid-stage. Zhang Zicheng spoke with excitement and regret, 2 wins and 2 losses. Senior Yao Yong just shook hands with a disciple of Skyrend, and the 2 are now competing in their alcohol tolerance. This result is better than Xianling sects. I heard that Xianling sect only won 2 out of the 5 early core forging matches, and only won 1 round against Ouyang Weijian in the mid-core forging matches. Now that Senior Martial Brother Lu is here, I'm sure Xianling sect will be able to win another round in the mid-core forging matches. Lu Ping smiled and said, the Eastern Sea's sects have many crouching tigers and hidden dragons. How can I guarantee victory? Zhang Zicheng did not refute him. Instead, he said, Senior Brother, I was confident in that match. However, Senior Brother said that the disciples of the Eastern Sea's various sects are all crouching tigers and hidden dragons. I did not believe it before, but now I have no choice but to believe it. Oh. Lu Ping's interest was piqued. Although he knew more about the Eastern Sea than his peers, Zhang Zicheng often worked under Heaven Spirit Hall's Enlightened Master Profound Miao and Enlightened Master Guoxianshan. Lu Ping thought Zhang Zicheng would be able to get a lot of information from them, so he asked, did Junior Moon hear anything? Zhang Zicheng said, although the disciples sent by the Eastern Sea's sects this time are the elites of their respective sects, but according to Martial Uncle Guoxianshan, these disciples are not the best. Moreover, whether it is Senior Martial Brother Ji, Senior Martial Brother Yin, or Senior Martial Brother Yao Yong, they can be said to be the best among our sect's early core forging disciples. Lu Ping nodded. What Zhang Zicheng said was true. The Eastern Sea's heritage was indeed better than the Northern Sea's, so he asked, did Junior Brother Xian and Junior Brother Xian Chu also compete with the Eastern Sea's disciples? Zhang Zicheng smiled, that's right. If it weren't for the 2 of them, I'm afraid it wouldn't have been easy for us to win. The 2 senior brothers each won 1 match, Senior Brother Yao drew 1, and lost the other 2 matches. Zhang Zicheng looked at Lu Ping and said, Yuan Zhan went up for 1 match. His cultivation is at the 3rd layer of core forging, and he fought against a Violet Talisman Pavilion disciple for several dozen moves. In the end, he lost. Lu Ping nodded without saying anything. Zhang Zicheng saw that Lu Ping's expression didn't change when he mentioned Yuan Zhan, so he thought for a moment and said, originally, Senior Brother Du Feng wanted to go up, but Yuan Zhan took the initiative. Martial Uncle Xian Shu also picked his general. If Senior Brother Du had gone up, perhaps we would have won another match. Lu Ping understood Zhang Zicheng's meaning and smiled, it's good to hide a bit. The 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are stronger than us. If we make their disciples suffer, it'll be a bad thing for our sect. After all, the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea are several times stronger than the 10 great sects of the Northern Sea. Zhang Zicheng nodded and pondered. Lu Ping smiled, why isn't Junior Brother continuing to observe? Are you going to leave? Zhang Zicheng smiled, there's nothing for me to do now, but there's still a pile of things to do in the courtyard. Martial Uncle Xian Yuan pushed all the matters of the courtyard to me, but he's still free and unfettered. Lu Ping patted Zhang Zicheng's shoulder. After the 2 said their goodbyes, Lu Ping continued to walk towards the square in front of the main hall. In the distance, he saw several late core forging cultivators sitting in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Among them, Daoist Guoxianshan was chatting with a cultivator with an arrogant expression. Lu Ping recognized this person's clothing. It was from the Eastern Sea's Crystal Palace. Next to them were 2 late core forging cultivators from Jinling and 4 other late core forging cultivators from the other 4 sects of the Eastern Sea. From time to time, their eyes would glance at the 2 cultivators sparring in the square. One of the 2 cultivators from Jinling was Daoist Liang Xianfeng, while the other one Lu Ping didn't know. Presumably, it was Daoist Xian Shu who schemed against Huangli Island. Among these people, there was also a person Lu Ping was familiar with. It was Daoist Qin from the Northern Alliance when Jinling participated in the Northern Alliance pill gathering in the Eastern Sea. Seeing that Daoist Qin was there, Lu Ping subconsciously didn't want him to discover that he was from the Northern Sea or even Jinling's disciple, so he quietly stood in an inconspicuous corner and watched the battle between the 2 sides. At this time, the Eastern Sea cultivator fighting was a disciple from Wind and Thunder Island, while Jinling's disciple was Lu Ping's acquaintance, Daoist Xianlei. Daoist Xianlei learned a powerful thunder attribute magic art. Wind and Thunder Island was famous for their wind attribute and thunder attribute cultivation methods in the Eastern Sea. Naturally, it was a fierce battle between the 2. However, in the end, Wind and Thunder Island's cultivator still had the upper hand. Daoist Xianlei's spiritual essence was not as strong as Wind and Thunder Island's cultivator, so Daoist Xianlei was defeated in the end. From the side, Lu Ping could clearly see that enlightened Master Xianlei's fighting experience wasn't any less than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivators. In fact, he was even braver than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Both of them cultivated lightning elemental spells, and they had been competing against each other with many basic spells. The lightning elemental spells they cast were the same, but the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator had a slight advantage in these spells. More often than not, his spells were stronger than enlightened Master Xianlei's. In addition to the fact that Wind and Thunder Island's cultivator's foundation was stronger than Daoist Xianlei's, the most likely reason for this phenomenon was that when Daoist Xianlei advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm, he smelted far less spirit items than Wind and Thunder Island's cultivator. Lu Ping had a lot of contact with Daoist Xianlei on Frost Island. He knew that Daoist Xianlei's accumulation when he advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm was enough for him to smelt low-grade Earth-step thunder attribute spirit items. However, thunder attribute spirit items were rare, so Daoist Xianlei couldn't advance to the mid-stage core forging realm for a long time. In the end, Daoist Xianlei had no choice but to smelt 2 high-grade mystic spirit items. Although it was much stronger than cultivators who smelted 1 spirit item, it was still not comparable to smelting low-grade Earth-step spirit items. This had always been a regret in Daoist Xianlei's heart. Now, this regret finally had the opposite effect. The Northern Sea was barren. Daoist Xianlei wasn't inferior to the disciples of the Eastern Sea in all aspects. However, ordinary elite disciples of Wind and Thunder Island could smelt low-grade Earth-step spirit items when they advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm. As the most elite disciple of Jinling, Daoist Xianlei couldn't obtain a low-grade Earth-step spirit item. In Jinling, a cultivator who smelted a high-grade mystic spirit item when he advanced to the mid-stage core forging realm could become an elite disciple and have the possibility of becoming a Dharma manifestation realm seed in the future, although the possibility was extremely small. In the Eastern Sea, the requirement was to reach the low-grade Earth-step spirit item. Only then could a cultivator be recognized by the sect and be nurtured as a Dharma manifestation seed. The scarcity of spirit items in the Northern Sea was evident. This was also why the Northern Sea cultivators could win more in the early-stage core forging realm. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm and smelted spirit items, the gap between the Northern Sea and Eastern Sea cultivators widened. The most obvious example was when Xian Ling Sect's early-stage core forging realm cultivators could win 2 matches against Eastern Sea cultivators of the same level. When they reached the mid-stage core forging realm, they could only rely on Xian Ling Sect's number 1 genius, Ouyang Weijian, to win 1 match. The second person to fight was Daoist Xian Xing of Jinling. The Eastern Sea sent out a disciple from the Northern Alliance. Unfortunately, Daoist Xian Xing's strength wasn't as strong as Daoist Xian Lei's, but this Northern Alliance disciple was stronger than the Wind and Thunder Island cultivator. Daoist Xian Xing was defeated in a hurry. The third person to fight was Jinling's disciple. Lu Ping didn't know him, but he heard that his name was Xian Shao. He was at Core Forging Realm level 5, but unfortunately, he was still defeated by a disciple from the Violet Talisman Pavilion. In the mid-stage Core Forging Realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. At this time, the surrounding cultivators of Jinling started whispering to each other. The competition between Jinling and Xian Ling's sect had been getting more and more intense in recent years. The two sects had to compete in everything. In the previous few battles between the two sects, Jinling always had the upper hand. This time, Jinling only needed to win one more match to suppress Xian Ling's sect. However, in the mid-stage Core Forging Realm, Jinling had lost 3 matches in a row. There were only 2 matches left, and East Sea's most powerful disciple, the Crystal Palace, had yet to fight. Once all the mid-stage Core Forging Realm cultivators were defeated, Jinling would become a laughingstock in front of Xian Ling's sect. Who's the next match? He won't lose again, right? I heard it's Reverend Xian Shang. Reverend Xian Shang is ranked in the top 10 among the new talents of North Sea. He should be able to win one match. It's hard to say. Reverend Xian Lei might not be much weaker than Reverend Xian Shang, and his opponent is Skyrend, the sect known as the strongest in terms of offense in the ocean. Reverend Xian Shang will probably lose this match. As expected, the 5 great sects of East Sea are not something we can compare to. In North Sea, all of the cultivators from our sect who are participating in the battle today have great reputations, but none of them can win against cultivators of the same level as them. In the end, North Sea can't compare to East Sea. No wonder some of the senior cultivators often say that our North Sea is barren. There's still one person from our sect who hasn't fought yet. Yes, where is perfected Lu Xianping, the Water Sword Immortal? During the chaotic battle in Heaven's Spirit Mountain, Reverend Lu Xianping suppressed several cultivators of the same level as him. What kind of reputation is that? If he's here, he'll definitely be able to win one match against East Sea, and that Ouyang Weijian won't be able to win. I heard that Reverend Lu Xianping went to Universe Island with Fornax Laozu. He probably hasn't returned yet, so he probably won't be able to make it to this festival. It's a pity. Why did he have to come at this critical moment? Perhaps our sect has other considerations. Think about it, if all the cultivators in the middle stage of the Core Forging Realm in our sect lose, we can still say that our strongest cultivator did not participate in the battle due to other matters. At that time, we can still save some face, but if Reverend Lu Xianping is here today, once he loses, it will mean that our sect cannot compare to Xian Ling's sect, and Lu Xianping cannot compare to Ouyang Weijian. Forget it. Our sect has always been open and aboveboard, and we're not afraid of being laughed at by others. If we win, and if we lose, we lose. There's no need for us to resort to such petty tricks. We'll only end up being laughed at. The cultivator from the Crystal Palace, who had been watching the battle with Reverend Guoxianshan in front of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, smiled at Reverend Guoxianshan and said, "The early core forging disciples of your sect are not bad. They can be considered as elites among the sects of the Eastern Sea. However, these mid-core forging disciples are a level lower than Xian Ling's sects. Although the 3 disciples of your sect gave it their all, they rarely performed anything that caught people's attention. They're not even comparable to Ouyang Weijian of Xian Ling's sect. Ouyang Weijian can be considered as an outstanding talent even among the large sects of the Eastern Sea. His future is limitless. I've heard that your sect has always been on equal footing with Xian Ling's sect in the Northern Sea. If this child reaches the Dharma manifestation stage in the future, he will be able to suppress your sect." The words of the cultivator from the Crystal Palace caused displeasure to appear on Reverend Liang Xianfeng and Reverend Xian Shu's faces. When the reverends of the other 4 sects of the Eastern Sea heard the words of the reverend from the Crystal Palace, they did not say anything. They just smiled and watched the battle between the cultivators below them, as if they were not involved in it. Reverend Guo Xianshan was not angered. Instead, he smiled and said, Xianling's sect has been around for longer than I, Xinling, and they've also been the #1 sect in the Northern Sea for 3,000 years. Their foundation is naturally not something that I, Xinling, can compare to. Even though they're going downhill now, Laozu is the one who holds up the sky. Even if I, Xinling, catch up to him, I still cannot compare to him. His tone was actually one of weakness. The cultivator from the Crystal Palace smiled and did not say anything else. Instead, he turned his gaze to the fourth battle in the field. The people who fought in this battle caused Lu Ping's eyes to brighten. Eastern Sea had sent out Skyren's disciple, and Jinling had sent out Reverend Xian Shang. Lu Ping had fought against Reverend Xian Shang several times in the past, so he knew that Reverend Xian Shang was stronger than Reverend Xian Lei, so he had a chance to win this battle. Just as he expected, Reverend Xian Shang swung his long spear like a dancing dragon and fought head-on against Skyren's disciple. The two of them fought fiercely, exchanging blows with each other, and the cheers from the crowd grew louder than the last. Skyren's sword technique required him to press forward with an indomitable will, using offense as defense, and Reverend Xian Shang was also a person who would rather break than bend. He was a person who loved fighting and fighting fiercely. The two of them could be said to be evenly matched in their battle, and their fight was also the most dangerous. In the end, both of them were injured, and the spectators were incredibly shocked. Skyren's disciple finally used one of Skyren's 7 great sword techniques, Heaven-Splitting Sword. Every single slash he delivered brought with it a presence that could split the world. Reverend Xian Shang's spear technique could clearly not compare to Skyren's disciple's sword technique, but Reverend Xian Shang had found an opening and decided to trade injury for injury, causing Skyren's disciple to hold back. He had a few chances to heavily injure Reverend Xian Shang, but because he would also be heavily injured, he had no choice but to stop midway. Skyren's disciple could not help but let out a cold snort as he watched the battle from the front of Heaven's Spirit Hall. He was very displeased with his sect's disciple, but he praised Reverend Xian Shang to the side. Skyren's disciple finally found an opening. His long sword turned into a long arc and stabbed towards Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. Reverend Xian Shang did not seem to expect that his opponent's flying sword would be so fast. When he saw that it was already too late for him to dodge, the spectating cultivators let out cries of surprise. Skyren's disciple also seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The pressure from fighting against Jinling's disciple was simply too great. This person was basically a desperado. He would rather be cut by his opponent just so he could leave a mark on his opponent's body. However, at that moment, the gazes of the late-stage core forging cultivators from the various sects watching the battle in front of Heaven's Spirit Hall changed. However, their expressions were different. Jinling's disciple's lips curled up into a smile, while Reverend Skyren's disciple snorted coldly. The other 4 sects of Eastern Sea shook their heads. At the same time, Lu Ping, who had been watching the battle from the side, also smiled faintly. Skyren's disciple had been careless. The opening on Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder was clearly a trap he had intentionally left behind. The long sword stabbed forward, but Reverend Xian Shang did not dodge. Instead, he leapt forward and pounced on the flying sword. Skyren's disciple could not stop in time, and the flying sword pierced through Reverend Xian Shang's shoulder. However, Reverend Xian Shang seized the chance to move forward and point his long spear horizontally at Skyren's disciple. With one thrust, he pierced through Skyren's disciple's protective chi and pointed at the disciple's throat. In the blink of an eye, the situation had suddenly changed. Skyren's disciple was dumbfounded, and the Jinling cultivators who were watching the battle were silent for a moment before they suddenly let out deafening cheers. When Lu Ping saw that his sect's middle-stage core forging cultivator had already won a battle, Jinling could once again suppress Xianling's sect. He walked towards the relocation rune, intending to return to Huangli Island. He still had many things to do, and he did not want to stay in this place for too long. If it were not for Tian Shualaozu's orders, Lu Ping would not have paid any attention to the sparring between the disciples of Eastern Sea. However, right when Lu Ping arrived in front of the relocation rune, a clear shout traveled into his ears. I am Crystal Palace's Zhang Shiji. I have heard that your sect's water sword immortal, Reverend Lu Xuanping's sword technique is excellent. Would you be willing to teach me? Chapter 440. There were more and more cultivators on Huangli Island. Due to Jiang Tianlin and Laozu's presence, there were even core forging realm cultivators appearing on Huangli Island. However, most of these core forging realm cultivators were Jinling cultivators or the core forging realm enlightened masters of Jinling's subordinate clans. Currently, the busiest person on Huangli Island was Hu Lili. When Lu Ping frequently went out and Jiang Tianlin and Laozu were absent, all the matters on Huangli Island were decided by Hu Lili alone. When Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, he saw a busy scene. Under Hu Lili's orders, many Jinling blood condensation disciples were setting up various formations and restrictions with various spiritual materials. Lu Ping knew that Hu Lili was preparing for enlightened master Guoshuanshan's mountain-moving sea-filling technique to expand Huangli Island. Under Hu Lili's command, Zheng Wu and the other 5 were also in charge of setting up a formation on Huangli Island. Most of these cultivators who were allowed to participate in Huangli Island's expansion plan were outer sect disciples or even inner sect disciples. Lu Ping didn't expect that Zheng Wu and the others, who had always been rogue cultivators, would be willing to become outer sect disciples of Jinling. A few days ago, Lu Ping once again guided a small spirit vein from Clear Stream Cave to Huangli Island. Currently, the number of small spirit veins on Huangli Island had increased to 4 and 5 miniature spirit veins. The spirit gathering area on Huangli Island had reached its peak. This was also the reason why Lu Ping was so anxious to invite enlightened Master Guoxianshan to Huangli Island to cast the mountain-moving sea-filling technique. The size of Huangli Island had become the biggest obstacle to Huangli Island's expansion. Lu Ping returned to his cave dwelling and placed the golden house on top of the spirit vein. The isolated mountain in the golden house had the effect of accumulating spiritual energy. Even without the nourishment of the spirit vein, the density of spiritual energy in the golden house could still be maintained for tens of days. Lu Ping still had a miniature spiritual gathering pearl that he obtained from Tian Shui and Laozu. After burying it in the spirit vein, it was only a matter of time before the 5th small spirit vein appeared on Huangli Island. Other than that, there were 3 miniature spiritual gathering pearls that he obtained from Clear Stream Cave dwelling. Lu Ping thought for a moment and buried them in the spirit vein. This way, the total number of miniature spirit veins would reach 8. If he guided another 2 small spirit veins, the 6 small spirit veins on Huangli Island would be formed. This kind of foundation was something that many medium-sized islands in Jinling couldn't compare to. Just as Lu Ping finished sorting out the spirit veins in the cave dwelling, Chen Lian had already arrived. When he saw Lu Ping, he smiled and said, I heard that you've been in the limelight on Huanyu Island recently. The dignified Xian Ling sect's alchemist grandmaster was humiliated by you. Now, the news has spread across the entire North Sea. Lu Ping smiled, you're the most well-informed. After saying that, he took out 22 of the 24 corals that he obtained from Clear Stream Cave dwelling. Chen Lian's eyes lit up when he saw the 22 corals. He smiled, this is really good stuff. Such huge corals must have taken thousands of years to form. Although there are all kinds of spiritual materials mixed together, it's good that it doesn't require too much effort to refine. Lu Ping smiled and took out 2 corals that were formed from second-grade mutated spiritual materials. Chen Lian was dumbfounded when he saw them. After a while, he exclaimed, we're rich. We're rich. This kind of good stuff can probably be separated from dozens of different mutated spiritual materials. Although there are many, it's still a rare treasure. After saying that, he looked at Lu Ping and hesitated, are you going to give this to me as well? Lu Ping nodded. Chen Lian was overjoyed. However, Lu Ping said, "There's a condition." Chen Lian nodded solemnly and said, "Say it." Lu Ping smiled and said, "I still have some good spiritual materials here. You have to refine 4 of the best magic weapons for me." One was a pair of fire and wind dual attribute magic treasures for Lu Qin. I also needed a wind attribute magic treasure, a water attribute halberd magic treasure, and a pair of ice attribute daggers for my 3 spirit pets, my little snakes. You have to bring out your best skills for these 4 magic weapons. As for the treasure restriction, you have to solve it yourself. In short, each magic weapon has to condense 3 treasure restriction, and it's best not to repeat them. In the future, you have to at least have the opportunity to upgrade them to psychic magic weapons. Chen Lian thought for a while and said with a smile, "I know it's not easy to take advantage of you. Well, I'm going all out this time. I still have some good things that I've accumulated over the years. This time, I'll use them all to make a few magic weapon embryos." Chen Lian's current level of attainment in the art of artifact refinement was inseparable from Lu Ping's strong support. The 2 of them had a deep friendship. Chen Lian was also one of Lu Ping's earliest good friends. Thus, there was no need to hold back in their conversation. Lu Ping brought out the gold scale sword. At the same time, there were also the 2 mutated spiritual materials that Lu Ping had collected. Then, he said to Chen Lian, "With these 2 spiritual materials, the gold scale sword should be able to condense the 5th treasure restriction. Given your current level of artifact refinement techniques, upgrading a psychic magic weapon should not be difficult, right?" Chen Lian accepted the gold scale sword. At the same time, he carefully inspected the 2 spiritual materials. After pondering for a moment, he said, "These 2 spiritual materials are indeed good items. They are enough to upgrade the gold scale sword's quality. However, you will need to figure out how to make the 5th treasure restriction. I do not have it. Even my master, Sage Enigma Flame, might not have it. You can only ask Patriarch Celestial River for it. Given your current position in the sect and the fact that the sect is relying on you, your request will be easily agreed to." Lu Ping nodded his head, not saying anything. Lu Ping was a Grandmaster Alchemist of Jinling. He had mastered the pill transformation technique for the blood-condensing pill. Additionally, the spiritual water pill was unique in the North Sea. The spiritual water meridian fostering pill that Lu Ping concocted was regarded as a treasure by Jinling. It was sold at a sky-high price in the North Sea's world of cultivation. Additionally, its quantity was extremely limited. At present, Lu Ping could be said to be the #1 alchemist in Jinling, with the exception of Tianlu Laozu. Given his status, it was naturally very easy for Lu Ping to ask the sect for a spiritual barrier. In fact, Jinling welcomed Lu Ping's actions. If Lu Ping had to deal with everything himself, unlike Jinling, that was something that the high-level cultivators of Jinling did not want to see. Lu Ping stretched his left hand out and grasped something. Next, his right hand stroked his left hand and a faint blue sword immediately appeared in Lu Ping's left hand. Wielding the water spirit sword, Lu Ping said, "At present, the water spirit sword has only condensed out 2 barriers. Given its quality, it can easily condense out a 3rd barrier. A pity." Although the water spirit sword had repeatedly performed miraculous feats in Lu Ping's hands, as Lu Ping's cultivation gradually increased, the enemies he faced also grew stronger. The water spirit sword was only an ordinary magic treasure that had condensed out 2 barriers. Even if it had a strange invisibility effect, its power was somewhat lacking. Chen Lian also said helplessly, "Not only is the invisible flying sword's quality rare, but its barrier is also the rarest. Our sect originally only had 1 barrier, which was passed down from failing sect. The other barrier was found in the shapeless sword art you obtained. If you want to condense the 3rd barrier, it will depend on your luck." Chen Lian took the golden scale sword with him, but Lu Ping planned to take advantage of this time to properly digest what he had accumulated. Although Lu Ping had not delayed his cultivation because of constantly going out, after advancing to the middle stage, his cultivation speed had plummeted, so he needed to settle down and meditate in seclusion for a period of time. After sending a sound-transmitting sword to Hu Lili, Lu Ping gave her some instructions for the upcoming period of time. Then, he sealed his cave abode and began to meditate in seclusion. Although the spirit-gathering pearl that he had just buried had yet to evolve into a spirit vein, there were already 4 small spirit veins and 5 miniature spirit veins in the cave abode, which was enough for Lu Ping to cultivate. However, Lu Ping was not satisfied with just this. In one breath, he laid down a spirit-gathering formation with 36 high-grade spirit stones, causing the density of the spiritual qi in the cave abode to almost turn into liquid. Then, he placed the golden house on top of the spirit vein and the spirit-gathering formation, absorbing all the dense spiritual qi in the cave abode. Lu Ping did not need to lay down a spirit-gathering formation to assist his cultivation. The small mountain in the golden house was a special spirit-gathering formation. Moreover, it was much more exquisite than the spirit-gathering formation set up by cultivators like Lu Ping and Hu Lili, who specialized in formations. Moreover, the North Sea wave listening technique that Lu Ping was cultivating was a cultivation technique that required a huge amount of spiritual qi. This cultivation technique itself was like a spirit-gathering formation, so there was no need for Lu Ping to gather spiritual qi. If it were not for the fact that there were 4 to 5 small spirit veins here, the spiritual qi would not be enough, so there was no need for him to gather it. Just like that, half a year passed. On top of the small mountain in the golden house, there was a magnificent palace. This was the central palace that Lu Ping had obtained from the clear stream abode. At this moment, inside the palace, Wan Yu looked at the surroundings of the palace and clicked her tongue. This is indeed an excellent spatial magic tool. Although it cannot compare to a large-scale spatial magic tool like the golden house, it is still the work of Fa Xiang Laozu. It is a pity that this palace lacks many decorations, so it looks empty. Lu Ping turned a black stone over and over in his hand. The green light in his eyes flickered continuously, but he still could not find anything. After a while, he put the stone down and asked, "What secret does this black jade stone contain? Why did you almost expose it during the North Sea Palace's alchemists' gathering? Although it is a high-grade mystic-level Earth attribute heaven and Earth spirit object, don't tell me that it was just to prepare for De Bao's advancement to the mid-stage of the core forging realm. De Bao is becoming more and more lazy in his cultivation. I'm afraid it will take decades for him to advance to the mid-stage of the core forging realm." Wan Yu chuckled and said, "Of course it is. I didn't think that I would encounter such an object in the North Sea. It looks like the North Sea is not as barren as the cultivation world thinks." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Just a single black jade stone is enough to make you feel so emotional. The barrenness of the North Sea cannot be improved by a single heaven and earth spirit object." Wan Yu said seriously, "That may not be the case. The cultivation world knows that the North Sea is barren, but that is only because the true treasures hidden in the North Sea have not been discovered yet." Wan Yu did not wait for Lu Ping to refute and continued, "Let's talk about the large-scale spirit or vein on Frost Island. The North Sea cultivation world has been developing for tens of thousands of years. Who would have thought that the snow-covered Frost Island would hide such great wealth? Although this large-scale spirit or vein alone is not enough to completely change the barrenness of the North Sea, who can deny that there are other cultivation resources hidden in unknown places in the North Sea?" This time, Lu Ping did not say anything. After thinking for a moment, he smiled and said, "Let's not talk about anything else. Just tell me what secrets this black jade stone contains." Wan Yu smiled mysteriously and said, "Do you know about growing soil?